what you're advocating for is literally for religion to control women.
No, I'm not
Like,
actually advocating for that. I'm advocating for women not having the right to unalive their children. That's what I'm
yes,
advocating for.
that is
And you
literally
haven't given me a
you
compelling
want them
argument
to
against
not
that.
have.
So they're human cells that make up a unique organism. What is that organism?
A human.
Okay, so it's a human. Who are the human's parents?
Humans.
Okay, so how is it not a child? What am I missing here, Victoria? Please enlighten me. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but that sounds like a child to me.
I don't even know how to make a response towards that because
Tim, how are you?
I'm great.
What do you have to say?
Well, I just want to talk about being pro-life and why you should be pro-choice.
Oh, you're pro-choice.
Yeah,
Why are you pro-choice?
because it's a woman's right. That's one of the reasons.
A
Then there's
woman's right to do what?
to have an abortion
Why?
because they have the right to privacy. Medical reasons. What else? I mean, those two reasons right there are pretty good reasons for them to have abortion as a right.
So abortion is a right because women have a right to privacy and medical diagnosis. I'm
Yeah,
confused because that doesn't seem to be
yeah,
really prevalent when it comes to
and
abortion. Why does that matter when we're talking about abortion?
they have the right to a medical process that is abortion.
So if I went around and I unalived 20 people outside right now and I called that a medical process because I'm cleansing my town of people that are undesirable and I'm cleaning up humans, would you say that I have a right to do so under protection of medical?
Well, that's not a good argument because abortion is literally a medical process. That's nowhere near a medical process. You're not even near a fucking hospital if you go
I
do
know,
that.
but it's just a blanket term that means nothing. You say, oh, it's a medical process. Do you know what an abortion is? Can you define an abortion?
Yeah, well, it's when you end a pregnancy.
What does it mean to end a pregnancy?
You can do it multiple ways.
No, I asked you, what does it mean to end a pregnancy? And you said you can do it multiple ways. What does that mean?
Yeah, because there's multiple ways to end a pregnancy. By you can take the baby out, or you can um.
So, what do you mean by take the baby out? You mean birth the child?
Yeah.
That's not an abortion. Birth is birth. That's
Or like a
natural.
C-section or an induced pregnancy, like
C-sections are not abortions.
When you take the baby out earlier. But abortion, one of the definitions is ending a pregnancy. So birthing a child.
Ending a pregnancy is a really vague and stupid definition for an abortion, and
But
it's not what we're talking about.
It's one of the it's one of the definitions though. But
it's a bad definition, and I hope you know that. When we're talking about an abortion, we're talking about the unaliving of the child in the womb.
Sure.
Simply.
Yeah, but miscarriage is also abortion. Yeah, that's true.
Miscarriages are not an abortion. Abortion is an act.
They are. Abortion is literally in the definition of miscarriage.
Miscarriage is not an abortion. It is not.
Abortion is literally in a definition
okay,
of
so here's what we can do. We can talk about what we're actually talking about, which is the unaliving of a child. That is what I would like to be banned. Or we can debate whether or not miscarriage is an abortion, which it most definitely is not. That's why it's called a miscarriage and not an abortion. So what do you want to do?
What miscarriage means?
Yes, it's an accidental loss of a child in the womb. An unintentional.
All right, they want me to stop deflecting even though I'm talking about abortion, but okay. So we could talk about women intentionally ending the child's life. So
yeah, so why how is that a private matter, and how does a woman have a right to unalive her child?
How is it a private matter? It's pretty obvious how that's a private matter. So let's talk about if they get SA'd and then they have to choose what they want to do with.
No, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about just fundamentally why a woman has a right to unalive her child.
So you would let them have that choice, right? If they get SA'd?
No, I wouldn't, because you don't have a choice to unalive another person that has done nothing wrong to you. That's not how this works.
Why did you say let's not talk about it when I just brought it up? Even though you don't even give the you don't even let them have the choice, even if they get SA'd. We
Okay,
should be
so
talking
this
about.
is what's happening. We're talking about the unaliving of a child in the womb, and I'm trying to fundamentally understand your stance, and I'm
Okay,
trying to
okay.
give you enough information so that you understand my stance. And what you're
So
saying is, let's look at the less than 1% of cases that happens on this issue and try to decide
no,
what to
it's
do
more
for
than
the
one.
entirety of the issue. How
It's
about
more than
this?
that.
How about we deal with the 97% of cases, the most typical pregnancies, and understand the
Well,
issue at
well,
that
why?
level, and then we can
Who is
deal with those
who's
grotesque
getting the most
acts.
abortions? Who's getting the most abortions?
What do you mean, women?
Yes. What type of
All
women are
women.
getting the most?
Uh,
Okay. What
black
type of
women.
women? Black women. Why is that? Even though that's not even true.
Who? What demographic gets most abortions? It's
White
white
women.
women. Black women get
Yes.
a third. White women get what? 40%.
I
Hispanics is
ain't
like
here.
20.
But
Okay, so what's your point?
oh, yeah. Why do black women get the most abortions? Do you know?
I don't know. That's a complicated question. I think that the mainly due to the Democratic Party, they have pushed this on them and have said that you instead of having to raise children, instead of trying to get out of poverty, here's what we'll do: we'll give you abortion and you can unalive your kids instead. That might be one of the reasons. I don't know precisely why the black community gets so many
Well, that's a
abortions,
lie.
but
That's a lie. So you just made up some far fetched shit. So we can look at how black women they are treated worse when they're getting when they have
okay,
to go through
stop.
pregnancy.
We're not going down this path because I want to
When they
know
have to go through
why should
pregnancy in a
abortion be
hospital, they
legal?
get
That's what
treated
I'm
way
asking.
worse.
It's the unaliving of a child in the womb. Do you think that
Yeah,
unaliving a
I
child
know
in the
what it
womb is
is.
justified?
That's not all. Yes, I think it's justified clearly.
How can you justify unaliving your own child?
If a woman gets SA, that's not her child, and she gets
Okay,
to
let's
abort it.
table the
What are
essay
you talking
stuff.
about?
In the typical pregnancy, how is it justified to unalive your child?
Because it literally can hurt. It can end her life. It can hurt her.
Okay, it's not
Like
ending her life.
hold
It's
up,
not ending
hold
her
up,
life. In this,
hold up, hold up,
let's
hold up,
give you a
hold up.
hypothetical. A woman is pregnant,
Yeah,
right? And she has a
I get
baby
it.
growing within her, right? And she goes to an abortion clinic at 3 months and she says, you know what? I just don't want this child anymore. There's no complications, no difficulties with the pregnancy. I just want to unalive my baby. Why should she be allowed to do that?
If she's not ready to have a child, or like, if a woman doesn't want to have a child, and then we force her to have a child, what would happen to
uh,
that child?
Good things might happen because
Good
that's
things might
required
happen.
for our society. Women must have children and we must raise those children. That's a fundamental
What the
truth.
fuck are you talking about? We do not have to keep
Sir,
having.
what happens if we don't have children and women don't raise their
Bro,
kids?
we literally have sperm banks, and we could literally like if we could literally stop having sex, and then like we all women we're not going fucking extinct. That's my point. We're not going extinct. We don't have to. Women do not have to keep
So
birthing
you think
out
that
kids.
women should stop having children? And
If they want to stop, they can stop. We don't need that. You realize that, right? We don't need that.
no, I don't realize that. That's a pretty absurd statement.
Do you think we're going extinct or something? Why would we have to keep reproducing? Like, what are you talking
Because
about?
reproducing is good. Because you actually produce something, and producing things are good on itself.
Okay, so if you have a baby and then a baby gets fucking reproducing is not inherently good.
Oh
I
yes,
mean,
of course. Creating things is fairly good, and when you're
so
reproducing a
if you
human
create
being, the most
okay,
rational creation that has
okay, if
ever
you create
existed
a
on this
if
earth,
you
that's pretty
okay,
cool.
I hear you. If you create a bad thing, is that good?
If you create a bad thing, is that good?
Yes. Yes.
No.
Okay, then. So creating things isn't inherently good.
I didn't say it was inherently good. I said that creating humans is inherently good because humans are
Okay, so if you
unique.
create a human that gets put into a terrible situation just because they were born, would that be good?
Yes, because you created a human, and creating humans is special and unique. And you don't really create a human. God creates a human, and He uses you to develop and grow
Hold up.
them. But
So you would put that into your ideals of choosing if a woman should have an abortion. So you would let your religion
Oh, 100%.
decide
Yes,
if
100%. I
women
have
should
no
have a
problem being religious. I think you're religious too, and we're all religious. Your idea of having a view of reproduction that is so negative is most certainly a religious belief. It's a bad
I don't have
religious
a I
belief,
have
but
a
it is.
neutral view on it. I have a neutral view on it. You have a
No, I mean,
positive
look,
view on it.
everything you've said can be tied to some sort of religious belief. You believe that women should have the privacy and the right to unalive their children in the womb if they so please. That to me
That
seems
came
that
from our
you worship,
yeah, that
man,
came
you
from the
worship the
amendment.
individual. I do not. I do not worship the individual. I do not worship man. I worship God. And so I believe that we should give to God what he deserves, and that is true religion. And so in this case of a woman unaliving her child in the womb, she has no right to do so because that's not good. That's not right. That's not just. But you justify it because who cares, right? She's a woman and it's her body and she can do whatever she wants because it's all
Do
about
you
her. I, I,
do you
I,
believe in
I.
separation of church and state?
That doesn't exist.
I said, do you believe in it? Like, oh, so no, you don't.
Um, I believe to it to the extent that you don't force people to uh, partake in religious ceremonies and be within your religious sect. But I don't believe it to the extent that I cannot have an opinion that's related to my religion. I don't believe it to
Sure.
the extent that the regime that we live in does not have to profess some sort of religious beliefs, like they all have throughout all of time.
So your what you're advocating for is literally for religion to control women.
No, I'm not
Like,
actually advocating for that. I'm advocating for women not having the right to unalive their children. That's what I'm
yes,
advocating for.
that is
And you
literally
haven't given me a compelling
them
argument
to
against
not
that.
have the choice. You want them women to not have the choice because of your religious beliefs. You literally want to control women because
Religion surely has a play in my beliefs, of
yes.
course.
Hold up,
But
don't you?
it's a
You literally
reasonable
want the
belief. You can reason it.
you literally want the government to control women because of your religious beliefs. Do you know how bad that sounds?
Yeah, it sounds bad, but it's not true.
It is bad, and it literally is true. You just said that.
You want the government to control the bodies of babies, literally to the extent that they're willing to dismember them because of your religious beliefs. Because you believe that woman is the highest entity in the world. That's the way I see it. So why don't we get rid of your religion? Right? Because your religion to me seems pretty false. My religion confesses into an infinite good, that we all work towards a common good, and we work together, and we try to improve and get better, and find that perfect morality that is out there. You
You're
seem to just believe that everyone can do whatever they want, and that you should worship yourself. I don't
no,
agree with that at all. We should get rid of your religion.
you're kind of crazy. You ain't gonna lie. You're a little bit. You're like kind of like a extremist, a religious extremist. Like this is, bro. You cannot make a decision like like you just pivoted to a religion that I don't believe in, but you really want to control women with the government just
I
because of
don't
your
want to
religious
control
beliefs.
women, dude. I don't. I love women. Women are great.
When
Women were made for
listen,
men.
listen,
Women
when you say
complement
they
us.
shouldn't have the when you say they shouldn't have the right to abortion, that is literally controlling them.
You don't have the right to schmurder. Do you agree?
I mean, self defense. I do.
Yeah, but you can't come into my condo right now and schmurder me, correct?
Yeah.
Right. I'm controlling you
When,
there. Because the reality is, whether you want to admit it or not, for you to have any freedom at all, we have to assert some sort of control over the people in society. If we do not, you have no freedom. Liberty doesn't exist. You don't have the ability to do what you ought to do. So we have to do things like, yeah, you can't come and schmurder me right now. You can't schmurder your child in the womb. You have to, I don't know, take care of your children. You can't abuse them. There are certain restrictions that we put on people so that we can enjoy these freedoms.
okay,
So
should we
it's
put a
completely ridiculous to say, oh, you want to stop unaliving children in the womb, you want to control women, and that's bad and that's religious. No, dude, that's just how this works if we're going to have a functioning government and a functioning place where we all live together and we coexist and we try to work towards what's better.
yeah, I just believe in our functioning government and society. People shouldn't use their religious beliefs to try to make big decisions with the government. That's just it doesn't never works out when people do things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worked out pretty well in the United States, considering the United States is a Christian country, and it's definitely been
Oh,
modeled off of some sort of Christian morality.
oh, is
So
that
I
right?
look around and I see the most powerful, most just, most equitable country that has ever existed on the face of the earth, and I say, that must be a lie, because
The
look at the
most
place I live
just,
in.
the most popular, the most just. the U.S. literally had race-based slavery and race-based sex trafficking, but and it was built by Christians.
Yes, indeed, was built by Christians, and we've made mistakes, 100%. But you cannot deny that this is the most just country that has ever existed. Just
How
so
can
you
it be
know,
the
we
most just
ended
country?
slavery and we ended segregation in this country.
Segregation pretty much still exists because we
It
didn't
does
do
not.
much to help the issues that it caused. So it pretty much like the effects are still here. And then we literally how is this the most just country but we had race based sex trafficking and race based slavery? That would
Because
automatically
because
make us not
people
the
are
best.
sinful. It is a broken world, and we make mistakes. But if
Have
you
you heard of
examine it in terms of every other country that has ever existed, there has never been a country like the United States of America that has been this just and has been this committed to
that's
equity and has
that's
been this
false.
committed to making sure that all people have an opportunity to pursue that American dream.
That's just a lie. Have you heard of the happiness index?
I've heard of it. I'm not a student of it.
Have you ever looked at it?
No.
It's like a ranking. We're not number one. We're not number one on anything.
Oh,
But
this is where they rate the countries based on their happiness.
yeah,
Happiness is unbelievably hard to measure. That's why I don't
I
look into that type
mean
of stuff because that's
it
that's
might be
quite silly.
hard, but they did it. They did it
Oh, and
well.
they did it. Yeah, and it's hard to do, meaning that it's doesn't always produce good results when you do so.
Yeah. Also, yeah,
So that's not. I
banning
mean, you can say,
abortion
oh,
wouldn't.
like the happiness index, blah 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 blah. The
We
studies
can
don't
look at
really
other.
matter, man.
We
They're
can look
not
at
good
other
studies.
rankings. The U.S. isn't ranked number one for anything.
Okay, would you like to live somewhere else then? Do you not like this country?
If more people start being like you in this country, I will have to move somewhere else expeditiously.
What's wrong with me? What's wrong with what have I expressed to you so far that makes you feel like I would threaten the what makes this country good?
You said you want to take the right away to
It's not
abortion
a
for women.
right. You do not have a right to unalive your child. You do
Okay, well,
not.
you said they shouldn't have the right, which the government, if they allowed them to get an abortion, it would kind of be a right. But
No,
you
but
said they.
see, the government can't give you a right to do such a disgusting thing to a child that has done nothing wrong. That's not a legitimate right. They can call it a right, but it's not. That's like saying, well, the government can give you a right to own slaves. Well, that's not just. That's not truly right. That's wrong. The government may say it's a right, but it's not correct. It's not in line with what we
Okay.
can reason as correct. So do you want to define right? I mean,
And it's
why do you
and
think
it's
that you should have the right to unalive a child, but
hold on.
besides privacy?
So you said when you brought up the Democrats, you were saying how they instead of they let them get abortions instead of helping them raise the child. I actually that would be good. Hold up, but if there was just people who wanted to have their kid, that would be good. They would help them raise that child. If people wasn't ready to have a kid and they just didn't want to have the kid, so they wanted to get an abortion, what would what's so wrong about that? We're gonna
Because you're
die anyway,
unaliving a
so
child. That's
we're
the
gonna die anyway. We're gonna die anyway, so that's
that's
not
a
really
dark view of
such
the
a good
world.
argument.
That's a dark view of the world. I think that all people are made in the image of God, and I think that all people have an opportunity to find their purpose and their happiness. Right? That's that third inalienable right, your pursuit of happiness. And so I think to say, well, you don't really get a right to life because I don't really care about your pursuit of happiness because we're all going to pass away one day. I think it's a very dark view of the world, and I just
No,
gawk at it. I think it's silly.
can they be happy in the womb? Can they experience those type of emotions really? Like,
Can they experience emotions in the womb?
can they experience happiness like
Does it
us?
matter? Can I ask you? Does it
Yes,
matter if
because
they
you
can
were
experience
literally
happiness in the
yes,
womb?
you
They're
were
still
you were
they're still a
literally just
human.
saying yes because you were literally just saying they got the right to pursuit of happiness, but they literally can't even do that because that law was made for people that
Yeah,
were
they're
literally
they're
not in
of a
a fucking
human,
womb.
and humans
The
have
law
that
was made for
ability
people that
at certain
are
stages of
living
their
that are
lives.
birth.
A day old child doesn't have this tremendous intellect where they can reason what their purpose in the world is, but they're still a child and they're still a human, and we still love them. We're still gonna will the good of them. It doesn't matter that at a certain stage you can't do what you will be able to do at some point. We still value you because you are of the human species. That's human dignity.
Okay, so should every should we be making this is so the women that don't want to have the baby, what should we do with that baby? Should we it should go for like adoption or the
Sure, anything but unaliving it. That's a great
what?
conversation we can have. But we first have to
Okay,
understand that we shouldn't
so
be unaliving the child. Doesn't make any sense.
but how is that? What if it's a good option? Hold up. How can if ending suffering before anything had happened to it, like if it was born, terrible things could happen to it compared to if it was not born. So how can you argue that every instance of it being alive is better than it being dead?
Um, I don't even know how to respond to that. Are you saying that
You're
if
basically
somebody is going to
arguing.
suffer, we should cleanse them from the womb?
No, I'm saying how are you going to argue that every instance of it being alive, every like whatever happens while it's alive, it's better than it being dead? How can you argue that?
I'm not going to say that every single person will do the best things in their life and they will obtain a certain value threshold. But what I will say is that it makes no sense to eliminate children in the womb. Moreover, we don't play a guessing game as to what you will turn out as to what your race is, as to what your sexual orientation is. We just value you because you are a human. There is no great equation that we pull out of our minds here and plug in variables and say, you know what? There's a 50% chance you're going to become the president. Let's save your life. You know what? There's a 25% chance you're just going to work in a factory. Let's not save your life. That's not how this works. You have value because you are a human. And it's quite silly to suggest that maybe we should consider how you're going to turn out before we just value you as what you are.
But if you don't want to ban abortion, I mean, if you want to ban abortion,
Yes.
don't you want to change the society too, right? You want to make sure every kid can eat and like they get
Yes,
all the
yes.
food they need, all the
Of
water they need,
course.
all
Every
the
kid
education they
should be
need.
well nourished, both mentally and physically. Yes.
Yes, both med. Yes, so
I
everything.
totally
So
agree.
education should be free. All that should be free,
No, I
right?
don't think education should be free because education is a privilege. Well, higher education is a privilege. Education, public
Yeah,
schools,
sure.
yes, that should mostly be free. I agree. But higher
Okay,
education
so
is
K
most
through
definitely a
12 should
privilege.
be free.
K through 12. Yeah, K through 12, sure. Sure. I could get behind that. I mean, there's going to be small fees here and there, but that's just how it
Well,
goes. I mean, yeah.
how come you want to talk about women that aren't being SA'd, but you wouldn't allow a woman that was SA'd to get an abortion with your
We can talk
beliefs?
about the SA case. I just want to come to an agreement on the most typical case first. And if we agree
Oh,
there, then we might be able to agree on the SA case. But if we don't agree there, let me just give you a little tip here from someone who does these conversations a lot. We're probably not going to agree on the SA case. So it's almost pointless. But if we agree that we shouldn't allow women to unalive their children in the vast majority of cases where they're just doing so because of out of a preference or what they think is right
do
to
you
do
have
in
a
their life,
do you
then we
have
can move on.
well yeah, they don't do it just for a preference. They do it like mostly for economic reasons or like for actual
Are
good reasons.
economic reasons good enough to unalive a child?
Yes.
How?
Why are you making it seem like unalive? They didn't even get to live yet. If you kill a
Okay, so
child
let
in the
me ask
womb,
you this
they
question.
didn't even get to live yet.
You have a poor mother, poor in the terms of economic, right? And she has a 5-day-old child, and she can't afford to take care of the child. Does she have the right to unalive that child? She has poor economics. The child.
We're talking about abortion. We're not talking about killing a child that's already been
Yeah,
born.
we're talking about abortion. I'm asking you a question that's related to abortion,
Oh,
related to
can
your
they get a?
stance. You
Oh,
believe
should they have
that
an
because of
abortion if they're
economic
going through?
situations, you can unalive children in the womb. Would you carry that principle out to a child outside of the womb?
No, because that's not abortion anymore.
Oh, okay. So it just matters that the child's inside the womb. That's what you
Yes,
really care
exactly.
about.
That's abortion. Yes,
That's
yes.
silly.
That's
That's silly
that's what
because
I
in
care
both
about.
cases, it's a child, and in both cases, you have somebody unaliving it. And you're just saying, oh, well, because it's in the womb, special protections
Well,
for
in
the
one
unaliving of the
case,
child. That's silly.
in,
right?
In
Because
one case,
you're
it's a
pleading to this location, and the location doesn't matter as much as you think it matters. Because pregnancy is unique indeed, but the basic principle, the basic relationship, is that you are dealing with a mother and her child.
oh yeah, I ain't gonna lie. I'm about to drop just so I can see women do this way better than me.
Dude, you can do it fine yourself. You don't need women to
I
do it
know I
better than you.
can. I
But
know. I literally want to see women
okay,
do
you're
it.
welcome to drop
But I
too. I
know
don't
they're
want to
gonna do
force
better
you to
than me.
be up here, but you can talk about
I
this
know.
topic because it's a human rights violation.
I know. I know. It's you didn't. I prove your beliefs are pretty bad. You didn't have any good arguments. So it's okay. They're gonna do just as good.
You really think my beliefs are bad? You think that it's bad to think that all humans have dignity and that we should protect
No,
all humans?
no. I think it's bad when you said we your religious beliefs. We should use that in the government to
Oh, of
not allow
course,
women to
yes.
get abortion. Yeah, that's pretty terrible.
Yeah, I mean, people
Then you
should bring in religion more often. Otherwise, you'll get these false religions that will just seep through the cracks, and then we'll all be under some sort of weird regime that is terrible for our existence. You laugh, but that's what's happening right now in our government. I think that men, especially, should be
I
much more proud of the faith that they come from.
what secret religion is controlling this?
I don't want to talk about it on TikTok,
I
but I
feel
have
you.
some
I feel it.
ideas. I have some ideas.
All right, I'm gonna
And
drop it so
I
I
don't
can
mean
watch.
secret religion as in there's a secret order. I mean that there are ideas among the modern left that are inherently religious. Whether that be the transgender issue or some other issue, these are religious ideas, but we can't talk about religion, even
Do
though
you support
they're
trans
the
women?
ones.
Do you support trans people?
I don't want to go down that road, but I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna just watch.
All right, man. You take care. There is religion in society. It's undeniable. Every regime has been religious, and people are inherently religious. And in all of these debates, it's the question as to what should we worship. You can connect everything down to. And so on some of those leftist issues, it's very clear what they want to worship. But what we want to worship is the infinite good, which is above us and is something to work towards. What it seems they want to worship is yourself, the human, your mind. It's a different religious beliefs. One is false and one is good because it renders to God what is God's, which is us and everything. True religion. All right. So, let's talk to somebody else. He said I had to talk to a woman next because women have to talk about this issue. So, sure.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good.
So I have a experience I'd like to share and maybe get your thoughts on as well. And I also I have a question to start this off, and I want you to think about this before, and don't if you don't mind not answering it right away, but just thinking about it after what I have to tell you. So first, like, you've never been pregnant. You are a man. You biologically could not get pregnant, right? So I was raised pro-life, very much pro-life. My mom had me at 18 years old. Um, and, when she had the sex talk with me, it was very much, do not terminate a pregnancy no matter what. That was like the sex talk I had. So I always knew in the back of my mind, that I was going to protect myself to make sure that I would never get pregnant and unwantingly. Well, 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. I'm only
Sorry to hear that.
37 now. Oh, thank you. So I've been on medications for 10 years, and I've been very diligent about maintaining my birth control because to avoid pregnancy, because I did not want to have to make that decision. So I, unfortunately, 2 years ago, got pregnant, and my body just completely started shutting down. And I was planning on keeping it. And it was like not even a question in my mind that I would terminate. Well, once my body started shutting down, and mind you, I had no family support. I would have done it completely on my own. And I physically cannot handle sometimes taking care of myself. I have good days and I have bad days with the Parkinson's. So my birth control just failed. And I had unfortunately make the decision to terminate my pregnancy because my body was completely shutting down. I had no help, and I felt like my body was rejecting the pregnancy. And then my medication is a class D for it's like birth defects. And my doctor took me off one of my medications, and I literally could not physically function. So when I made that decision, and mind you, it was not an easy one to make. Looking back on it now, if I had to relive that all over again, I would have made the same decision. I don't regret it. And I know that might sound a little morbid, but I don't, because what kind of mother would I have been? And in my heart, I would have never been able to put my baby up for adoption. And also, what if, there's always all these what ifs. What if the baby has a birth defect and I have to take care of now this alien sick child? It was like all of the research I had done. Mind you, Parkinson's does not affect young women. It affects the elderly. And so there's really no research about pregnancy and the diagnosis of having Parkinson's and being on the medications I'm on. So, but there's studies in rats and whatnot. So, all of the babies that, were from those studies had birth defects and the rat babies. But I wanted to share my personal experience because it was not an easy decision to make. And I would do it again. I've since had my tubes tied to prevent that from happening. I don't have any other children. And that was the first and only time that I've ever been pregnant. And I again, raised very much pro-life. But in that moment, my mom and my sister, they helped me through the decision of having to terminate the pregnancy. So it's those kind of circumstances that people don't really realize. I think you're just thinking of that it's automatically terminating a life.
So, all right. So let me jump in here because we've heard your story, and I appreciate you sharing. I know it's hard to share those personal experiences, especially when they're that difficult. You have no right to unalive your child. And
why do you say that, though? What makes you think that?
Because it is wrong to unalive children in the womb. Even if you think that the child's going to have a tough life, even if you can't directly raise the child, that doesn't take away the fact that that child has infinite value. They're special, they're unique.
I was honestly, a week along, because I know exactly the date I got pregnant. If it was because I hadn't had intercourse for a very long time, and then I did, and then so I knew the exact date. And it was a month and 3 days after that I decided to terminate. It was very, very quick. So
right, but that doesn't make it. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right to unalive your child's life. Right,
but it's not unaliving a child when it literally is a mass of cells. What
so you believe that the fetus? You believe the fetus in the womb is not a child. You believe it is simply a mass of cells.
At the time of my pregnancy, yes, I do believe it was just a mass of cells, yes. Scientifically speaking, medically speaking, yes. I do not feel like had I been able to deliver that mass of cells, it would not survive out of the womb. And I do.
Is it an organism? Is it cells of an organism? Is it an organism?
I don't even know what it would have been classified as at that time because
it is. I'll give you a hint. It is. Do you know what cells?
But can that
what
survive?
Cell species
is it survivable outside of the womb?
Is it survivable outside of the womb? Who cares? Why does that matter?
Because that's the kind of the point of my point about the pro-life, pro-choice aspect of things. I do believe that there should be a cutoff point. That if it's viable outside of the womb, if they can survive, the baby can survive outside.
Yeah, it's a fairly silly question, right? Because that's like saying, is your 2-day-old child survivable on its own? No, right? It needs something to sustain its life.
Living human being, whether it has like you mentioned,
and so is the baby in the womb.
No, not at the state of pregnancy in which I was at. That's not a baby. That's a massive cell.
So when did you abort your child? When did you abort your child?
Would I abort my child?
When did you?
2 years ago.
No, at what point in pregnancy?
Like I said, I got pregnant. I know exactly the date. It was January 4th. I found out January 24th that I was pregnant, and I terminated by February 3rd.
That's very early.
See? But so I'm saying like that was in 2022.
That's a child at 4 weeks.
That's not a child though.
So when you terminated your child, its brain had already begun forming, its heartbeat was there. It was a unique
There's no
organism.
heartbeat. There was no heartbeat. Because
How
when
old
I
was the
went
child?
to
6 weeks? Heartbeat starts at about 27 days, 28 days.
well, I was less than that, and even if it was after that point, my body was rejecting. I physically could not move. Like I was like bedbound. My brother-in-law had to carry me to the car to get out because my doctor took me off meds once I found out I was pregnant because like I said from the beginning, once I found out I was planning on keeping it, so I notified my neurologist, and he said, okay, we'll have to take you off this medication and there's a very high chance that you will have birth defects. And I said, well, that's just the risk I'm going to have to take. And then I talked to my family about it, and mind you, my sister had just had a baby. My niece was only a couple months old at this time. So I had to make the decision what was right for me physically, mentally, and my overall well-being.
Yeah,
Like,
and you did all that stuff, and again,
Yeah.
I know it's a tough situation, but you made
being
the
in that
wrong choice.
situation
You
has
made,
totally changed
madam,
my
you
outlook on
made
it.
the wrong choice. You shouldn't have unalived your child. That was wrong to do.
I disagree, and I don't feel guilty about it. Honestly, I would do it
I'm not
again if I
asking you
had
to feel
to.
guilty about it, but I am telling you that it was wrong. You made the wrong choice.
Well, how do you, because again, going back to my question that I asked in the beginning, how do you know what it's like to be pregnant? How do you know
I
what
don't know what
it's
it's
like
like
to
to
be
be
in that situation?
pregnant. I'm a man.
That's the point, is that men really shouldn't be making decisions regarding a woman's body and vice versa. Do you
It
believe
doesn't
in
matter. It
vasectomy?
doesn't matter because I can still
It
have a
does
decision on
matter.
the unaliving of my fellow human being.
But do you believe in vasectomies?
Do I believe in vasectomies as if they do
Like, would you get
exist?
a vasectomy? Would you get a
Oh, I would
vasectomy?
never get a vasectomy. That's very weird.
Really? So you feel like are you married? Do you have any children now?
I have no children now, and I'm currently single.
Well, I wonder why. But no, I really do strongly feel that a man should not be making decisions regarding a woman's body and vice versa. Like, who am I to tell you that you cannot get a vasectomy if you wanted one? And like, that's preventing the reproduction. That's preventing people from having babies. You're stopping that process.
I mean, are you going to
It's a
argue
very,
that
I
women
can
should get their
argue that,
tubes
you
tied?
know.
What's your point? You're saying,
I know
oh,
what
we
you
should
said, so I
force
could prevent
men, we
that
should
happening
end their
again.
reproductive nature. We should get rid of their reproductive nature. What is this argument? I don't understand. I'm talking about the
Because
unaliving
not
of a
everybody
child in the
should
womb.
reproduce physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, environmentally. Not everybody should reproduce. And those people the women that do, women that get pregnant and are unable to complete the pregnancy and fulfill that. I wanted to share my story because I wanted to make it very clear that it's not cut and dry. It's not oh, I'm pregnant. Oh, well, I'll just get an abortion. I mean, maybe there are people out there
It's like
but
that
it's not
most
that
of the
easy.
time. Yeah.
How do you know though? Because you're not a woman. You're not in this situation. You've never been put in this situation. Have you ever gotten a woman pregnant and they said, I don't think I can continue this pregnancy? Have you ever been in that position where you had to experience that and be
If
alongside the woman?
when I get a woman pregnant, and if she ever told me, I don't know if I can continue this pregnancy, I would not
What
allow
would you
her to
do?
unalive the
What
child.
rights do you think you would even
Because it
have?
would be my child too. It's like
And I
saying, would I
agree with
let my
that. And I
wife
do agree
unalive
with
my
that.
kids?
I
No.
do feel like men, fathers don't have enough rights in a sense, but at the same time, it is her body.
Okay, great. It's her body.
So,
She has
but
obligations
you've
with
never
her
been in
body.
that
I agree.
situation, so you can't really say how you handle it. And someone made a comment earlier that said it's like 98% of abortions. I'm not really sure if they meant that it was a difficult decision or not a difficult situation, but I really do genuinely feel it's not an easy decision for any woman to make to have to terminate a pregnancy. Because naturally,
If they
I think
understand
we all
what's
want to
going
keep it.
on. Not all
What
women
do you
do.
mean?
I mean,
What do
I
you
think
mean?
that it's gradial. So if you really don't know what's going on, there might be some natural instincts that tell you it's wrong to unalive your child, even though you might believe it's a clump of cells. If you understand the situation very well, then that might be an extremely difficult situation or thing to do.
Yeah, because every situation is different, and it's not.
Yeah,
I don't
but
always
through
think it's in
through
the
that
best interest of a
whole
woman to have to
radial
birth a child.
spectrum, it doesn't matter. It's still wrong. They just have a misperception of reality. That's what we're dealing with here. And it does usually come down to most women don't understand the situation. And I've seen this anecdotally since you brought up your evidence through, what you've experienced. I've seen this with friends who are girls. I've seen this with close family members. Once they actually learn about abortion, once they actually see how grotesque this is, they understand the basic nature of the situation, they become pro-life. Because it's the most reasonable stance. You're actually the radical person here. You're arguing
How am I
that
the radical
people
person when I was
should...
literally raised pro-life? Like my whole
Yeah,
life,
now
I've
and
always
now
wanted to
you've
be very
become
pro-life.
you've
My
been
mom had it
you've been
18 years old.
radicalized, unfortunately, because of your tragic experience. But that has influenced you to become a radical. And I'm just pointing it out that this is a radical view you have.
Why? Because I actually have had an abortion, and I'm willing to speak out about it and advocate for women that were in my position. And the fact that really, as
You're
a
not
man,
just
you don't know what
advocating
it's
for
like
that though.
to be in
You're
that
just you're
position.
generally advocating for abortion, right? You think that
No,
abortion
I'm
should be
advocating for
legal,
the
correct?
women, those women that are being put in a situation that they did not expect to be put in, and that they can make decisions for their own life and their own body. Because you, as a man, do
How
not
are
know.
you helping women in those situations? Let me ask you. How are you helping them?
I'm having this conversation with you. I'm just like
No.
pointing
I'm
out that
saying,
there's other
how does your
situations.
activism or your speech
Well,
for the
how
pro-choice
are you
movement,
helping women? How
how
are
does
you
the
helping?
pro-choice movement, this is another way to say it, how does the pro-choice movement help women? What is
Okay,
helping
because
women
we're
by
not
letting them
being
unalive their
forced
offspring?
to. Because it's not, in my opinion, it's not unaliving. It's at that point in my pregnancy, I don't even feel like it was a pregnancy, and to be completely honest, because it was so early on, and to be put in that situation to have a child because I am completely by myself, it just goes right back into the system of welfare and Medi-Cal and all these other things in the world that we're trying to like cut back on, right? And I just don't understand like why I would have had been forced to have that
Yeah, but
baby.
what are you doing for women? I'm missing something here. You're advocating for unaliving the offspring, and you're saying you're helping
Well,
women.
what are you doing? What are you doing for society by saying that
No,
women
I'm.
have
It's
to
a
have
question.
babies?
You don't. You can
And
decline
I'm
to
putting it back on
answer,
you.
but
I'm putting it back on you. I would like to know.
are you going to answer my question?
Well, I don't really understand like your question. I don't really understand like
Like,
what you're trying to get at.
what does this do for women? It seems like all you're doing is giving them an ability to unalive children. How is that good for women?
But that's
How is that
their
good for
decision
women?
to
How
make.
is that
That's not a
beneficial
decision
for
that you
women
need to
and
make. That's
women's
their
rights?
own life. That's a decision that person should have to make. Just like any other medical decision that you want to make for yourself. No one should have to
It's
tell
not
you
like
how.
every other medical decision you make for
It
yourself.
really is. It
No,
really
it's
is.
not. It's not.
Yes, it is. It's their body. They can do whatever they physically want
No,
with their own
you
body.
don't get to do whatever you want with your body. That's a silly thing to
Yes,
say.
I definitely
Can you
disagree with
smoke in a
that.
hospital?
That's not. Oh my gosh, that's so different.
Can you
No, that's
smoke in a
totally
hospital? Yes or
different.
no?
That's completely different. That's not
Oh,
even
you
the
don't like
same.
answering
Like you're
questions.
getting
This is
off
how this
topic.
works. I ask you a question and you answer. You can ask me questions and I'll answer. Do you like smoking, or do you think you should be able to smoke in a hospital?
No, because there's oxygen
Oh, but it's
running
your
in
body.
you.
It's your body, though, and you can do whatever you want with your
You can
body.
smoke outside the hospital. You can
No,
go
but
outside and
but it
smoke
is
outside.
your body. It is your body, and you should be able to
But
smoke in
what?
that
Okay.
hospital.
But do you see how like far fetched that question is? That's a very far fetched
How
question.
is that far-fetched? It's a
That's like
simple
not
question
even.
as
That's
to
not even
what
like
you
even
can and
like in the
cannot do
past.
with your body.
That's like okay. Then let me use this as an example for you. Okay, you have to have a blood transfusion. But I'm telling you, you cannot have that blood transfusion because I don't think you should have. You should have one because you could run the risk of getting HIV from the blood. And I think that you cannot have that blood transfusion. And you want it, and you're like, it's my body. I need to have this blood transfusion. But I'm telling you, no, you cannot have it because there's too much of a risk. That to me is more in alignment of what you're telling me about. I can't do with my
That's
body.
not
It's like,
actually, that's another question to ask to try to understand how much liberty we really have. And liberty is a beautiful thing because it's been refined throughout the ages. That's why it's so important to look at what we've done in the past. But I digress. That's another question as to what the integrity of man is and what the wholeness of man is and how much autonomy we truly have. Great question for that, but it's not relatable to abortion. So yeah,
no,
you fired back with another question that we can discuss and try to understand how much freedom we have, but not talking about abortion there either, if you're going to be critical of me.
okay, but I'm just trying to compare, like, when it comes to actually, like, physically what you are telling me I cannot do with my body. I'm trying to just turn it around.
Okay,
and tell you
great.
something.
You cannot unalive people with your body unless you're defending yourself, I'll say.
How is that not defending myself then?
Because the baby's not attacking you.
It was attacking me Physically, I could not move and function. My body could not. I could not walk.
Let's talk about the typical pregnancy. In the typical pregnancy,
Well,
the baby is not
I'm
intact.
talking about the pregnancy I had.
Yeah, but
So
I'm
that's
talking
why-
about the general case because that's the most important stuff to talk about.
Okay, that's fair. And okay, and then going back to that, I do believe that there should be a cutoff and a limit to what the time frame in a pregnancy in which the termination can happen. That's
Okay.
my honest opinion about that.
When-
I don't think at 7.5 months somebody should be able to terminate a pregnancy because that fetus, in my opinion, I don't like that term fetus, to be completely honest. I do think it's a baby because that is viable outside of the womb. In my case, though, in any case, like even early in the first trimester, I think it should be allowed because you need to make that decision right then and there. It shouldn't be a decision that you sit on and sleep on because.
Well, most women
just
don't even know they're
not.
pregnant until 8 weeks.
That's fair. Yes, that's fair. That's
Most
still-
women are
isn't that
having
first-
abortions
first
around, like,
trimester, though? Isn't it
11,
the
12
first 10
weeks.
weeks, the first trimester.
Yeah, at the end of first trimester, that's when most people are having abortions. Most women.
Yeah. So that pregnancy to deliver that would not survive outside of the womb. That's not survivable outside of the womb.
Yeah,
that should be a
neither
decision
are
that
you. It
woman
seems
has to
like
make.
you're not really survivable outside the womb. You need help of everybody else around you, and that's not supposed to be an insult because I do too. I don't have the same condition you have, but I need people around me as well. We all need each other. That's
Okay, but
saying that you you require somebody is not a good argument.
it is
How?
because like you showed that picture, right? You showed that picture of a fetus or embryo or whatever you want to call it, a baby, I guess.
Yeah,
At 4 weeks,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, a baby at 4 weeks. Is that survivable outside of the womb on its own? Like not just on its own, but like with the aid of man, like machines and
It is
whatnot.
not survivable outside the womb on its own, but neither are you, and neither is a day-old child, and truly neither is anybody. But we can't survive on our own. We're social creatures. It's like I think it shows, and I don't know if you're a leftist, but I'm gonna guess you are. It shows how insane leftism is because this is like a basic principle in political philosophy that we have to rely on each other to some extent, and that's why we exist within these communities. And for whatever reason, on this particular issue, the biggest argument is that we actually value people based off of their ability to rely on other people. But that is a fundamental part of humanity, is relying on other people. So it's silly to me, but whatever.
Well, hate to break it to you and break your heart, but I'm not a leftist by any means. But I do have beliefs in that. I do think that a woman should have the option in case a situation like mine happens.
Yeah, let's have an
it's
exception.
medical-
Let's have an exception for cases where you are going to lose your life. I don't think you were going to lose your life, but in cases
Yeah.
where you're going to lose your life, you have an exception. Like they have in Texas, for example.
Yeah, and that would be technically considered like a DNC, right? So, like those, like the two bulls and the tubal pregnancies
But
and
we're
all that, you
we're
know?
talking about the typical case. So do you want to come to an agreement on the typical case? Let's say like a 20-year-old woman who gets pregnant and decides she doesn't want a baby in her life. She goes to an abortion clinic at 11 weeks and offs her child. Would you say that's wrong? Would you say we should ban that?
I think it's wrong to judge somebody for making a decision that's not always easy. And I think that
I'm
she
not
should have
judging
that right.
them.
I think
I'm
she
not
should have that
judging
right
them
regardless
personally
of-
right now. I'm judging the decision they made, or I'm judging
Well,
what's
that's
right
not
and wrong
really
in the
your
situation.
place. That's not really your place.
How is it not my place to tell
Because
people
you're
what's
not
right
her.
and wrong?
You don't know her life. You don't know her situation. You don't know her medical history. You don't know anything about this.
None of
girl.
that
You're
really
just
matters.
assuming.
None of that really matters in my hypothetical.
It does matter. It
So I'm talking about a
significantly
case where the
matters.
baby's not in danger, she's not in danger. The only thing that is in danger is the
I think you're
the
assuming that if
boogeyman
you
that
make
she's
the decision-
creating in her own life to give her justification to unalive a child.
I disagree. But
So, okay,
I
the
think
typical
that-
case, again, 11 weeks pregnant, 11, 12 weeks pregnant, she goes to Planned Parenthood. Should she be able to get that abortion?
If that's a decision that she feels she needs to make, then yes.
That's absurd.
But
She
what,
can
who are
justify
you to say
unaliving
that
her
she
child
can't do
based
that?
off of what she thinks is right and wrong. Crazy.
Yeah, that's her life. That's her body.
Yeah, and she'll make the wrong decision. That's a wrong decision. I don't care if it's her body.
But going back again to you, that's like me telling you you can't have a blood transfusion.
No, it's not,
I
because
think it's wrong.
abortion is an
I think
act
it's
of
wrong.
unaliving a child.
I'm sorry. Say that again. I missed that.
Abortion is unaliving a child. There are two bodies involved. You're talking about a case with just my body and how much liberty I have to do what I ought to do. It's two different things.
No, I get that.
Okay,
No,
so
I get that.
if you get it, then what's the confusion?
Because I think because I experienced something that I never thought I'd experience, and it changed my outlook on women in general being able to make the decision for their own body.
Okay, but you can't think about the world that way and just through your lens. Again,
But
it's coming back to
but
this
it
fundamental
has
idea that your
changed my
experience is the
opinion.
highest experience among every other person, that you are somebody to worship within yourself. You have to call to other things out there, whether that be religion, whether that be reasoning, whether that be the law that's written both on our hearts and understood through our minds. You have to
Well,
feed on these different schools to come to a result that makes sense. And for you just to say that I grew up pro-life and I had this tragic situation, which indeed sounded tragic to some extent, and now I'm pro-choice for, all of these women, it's so weak and it's so unreasonable.
how do you know though? Because you've never experienced.
I just laid
what
it out
I've
for
experienced.
you how I
will
know.
never
I
experience
reasoned
what
it
I've
for
experienced.
you. I used language that you can try to grasp so that you can understand the meaning of what I'm saying. That's how we do
Don't.
this.
I'm not picking up what you're laying down and that you just said, because it's so different when you're actually in it. It's so different. Because I was on your side. I was like 1,000%. There's no reason why a woman should have an abortion. 100,000,000%. There's no reason for it before this happened to me. And once I was in it, it just changed my opinion. Because if I didn't have that option, like what would have happened to my body? What would have happened to my life? What would have happened to my finance? Like I would have been like effed. I would have been screwed. Like I just don't know how I would have been able to even function and take care of a baby. Oh, I sometimes can't take care of myself, like physically. Like I need help sometimes. So I just being
Okay.
in that situation just changed my opinion, because but again, before that, 100,000,000%, I would have been on your side. I would have been right here with you advocating for pro-life.
Okay,
If
so
had I not
just
been put in
from
this
a
situation.
basic understanding of how we should reason and how we should think, it seems that you have been miseducated on how to think. That might be your biggest flaw. Because you're saying, I used to be pro-life, and now I've had this experience, and now I'm not pro-life solely on my own experience. But that's not how you rule, that's not how you govern, and that's not how you come to conclusions, solely based on your own experience. Sure, you can in certain cases, and your own experiences do matter, but if we're going to enforce something like I'm proposing we do, and like you are proposing we do, just on the other side, across the entire country and across all people, then you cannot solely rely on your experience alone. You have to take other things.
No, and I do agree with that. I do, but I'm just saying, I'm just sharing a different perspective, trying to just share a different
Yes,
perspective.
I appreciate that perspective, but
Okay, thank you for that, because and I'm not trying to deflect. I'm not trying to beat around the bush, or I'm not trying to not answer questions. Some questions I just don't honestly know how to answer, because again, like I said in the beginning, I was very much raised pro-life. So there's things that you're saying that I definitely agree with you, but again, I have to resort back to my experience, because
yeah, I get it.
had I not
I
been in
get
that
you have a
situation, I
tough
would have never,
experience, but
I would never, and if I was healthy, if I was healthy and I didn't have this diagnosis, I would have continued the pregnancy. No questions
why?
about it.
Why would you continue the pregnancy?
Because I was raised pro-life, and I feel like I feel
So
like my
if
body
you
was
were
physically shutting
healthy,
down.
if you were healthy, would it be wrong for you to unalive your child?
I would have never personally done that.
But if you
if I was
did decide
healthy.
to do it, if you were healthy, would it have been wrong?
I wouldn't have never even considered it.
Okay, that's not the question. The question is, if you
But
were
I'm telling you, like
healthy,
I wouldn't have done that.
okay,
So
but
I
if
don't know how
you
to answer that question
were
if I wouldn't have ever done
healthy,
that.
and here's the other thing, you wouldn't have been healthy either. That's not possible either, because you're not healthy, you're sick, right? So I'm asking you, if
Exactly.
you were healthy and you had your child, would it have been right for you to unalive it?
No, that's a tough question, and I never thought about it in that perspective. So,
Yeah, think about it.
for myself personally, yes, I would have felt morally and personally wrong about terminating, because that's just not, like I said in the very beginning also, my plan from the very start was to keep the pregnancy. I didn't even think about that as an option until my body started like shutting down slowly. So, and it was only a couple days. Like I said, I found out on the 24th of January and terminated by the 3rd of February. So in that time span,
so
my body
you
didn't
you
shut down.
wouldn't allow it. You wouldn't allow it for yourself. Why would you allow other people to do it?
The only reason why I can say this now is because of my experience. Because before my experience, I wouldn't have been able to sit here with you and have this conversation.
Stop. You're sidestepping again. Okay.
No, I don't
You
know how to
said-
answer that because I don't know, because I
Oh, you
don't
don't know. Okay,
it's
that's
based on
better
my
than
experience.
saying you wouldn't allow, right? You don't know. You have to think about it. So why don't you go think about it? Because if you don't know that answer, meaning that the question, you wouldn't allow yourself to unalive your child. If you were healthy and if you had that child, you wouldn't have done that because it wouldn't have been right. Why that wouldn't apply, that reasoning, to the broader public? Maybe you should think
No, and
about
I get
that.
completely get what you're asking, and I do feel like you have a valid question there. I just, because of my experience, I can't really answer that because
Well,
my
no.
experience
Actually, you
changed my
can
opinion,
answer it. You need time to think about it. So what you need to do, and
Had I been
please
healthy,
don't take
then
disrespect
I'll
because
answer
I'm
for you right
telling
now.
you.
Had I been healthy and I continued my pregnancy, I would probably still stand in the pro-life aspect of things and not think that
Okay,
it's right for
stop.
an abortion to happen.
The
Is that
question
what you're
I've already
asking? I'm
posed a
not really.
couple times and you don't have an answer to. You need to think about that question. I'm just look, it's wisdom for you right now. This is wisdom that might help your life a lot. Just think about that question and come to a good answer. Think about why you wouldn't do it to yourself, but you would allow other women to do that. Fundamentally, just go think
I
about it.
just
I'm
answered
not
it.
saying you have to take
I
it
did
now.
just answer it
Go.
for you.
Oh, so
I did just answer. I said that had I been healthy and I continued my pregnancy, I would have still been in the mindset of a pro-life mindset and thought that it was wrong for anybody to have an abortion. Isn't that what you're asking? Is that what you're asking or no?
I think we should wrap up with me and you
Okay.
because I don't think we're getting anywhere.
Thank you for taking my call and conversating with me. And
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
sure, bye.
One of the greatest problems we face today is the lack of education of our youth. People do not know how to think. This is going to be the most frustrating and difficult thing to overcome for years because it's only getting worse. If nobody sets the guardrails up, if nobody gives you golf lessons when they hand you a driver, if you get a screwdriver and you're told to hammer in a nail, you're not going to get a reasonable result. In the same way, the brain or the mind or the intellect needs to be formed in a certain way that allows you to get reasonable results in your life. And that's the most troubling reality. I think that one of the most troubling realities that we face in this country is people not knowing how to think. Anyway, that's my monologue since she got to monologue for a while. I think it's only fair that I get to monologue for a minute or two. Please like the live. That is the best way to get more people up. Oh, thank you for the galaxy. That's cool. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. So, hey, live goal reach. Nice. All right. Let's hear from Rathlin 545. It's your live, man. You can mute people anytime. Rathlin.
All right, I got at work here soon, so I won't be on long.
Okay.
All right, I'm pro-choice. Now, life does not begin at conception, like you'll argue. Now, it has been argued by religious scholars and religious leaders that life begins at the quickening, which is 16 to 20 weeks, which is right where Roe v. Wade allowed legal abortions. Now, your worldviews just want you as a minority to be able to control the majority of women to have the free will of choice of what to do with their health, their body.
Okay. So, you want me to respond?
Go for it.
So life does begin at conception. That's false to say it does not.
No, that is only a guidepost that has been pushed upon people. Not a guidepost, a goalpost. Keep redrawing the lines. Life begins at birth.
It's
then
the
life
only
begins,
it's the only line that makes sense to draw.
begins.
You're alive at conception. Who you are is who you were at conception.
Now, if you don't have heartbeat, have formed thought, which heartbeat starts at the quickening,
Which is what period in pregnancy?
16 to 20 weeks.
That's not true. Heartbeat starts at 28 days.
28 days. Am I mixing days and weeks?
I don't know what you're mixing. Are you drinking? I'm messing with you. I don't know what you're mixing up. The heartbeat begins pretty early on.
Jokes just make you look like an ass.
I forgot what saint made this comment, but you can't. I gotta get the quote so I can quote it better. But you can't take yourself too seriously all the time. You have to have a little fun in life. But go on.
But no. You see, up until the ADA, the AMA decided to come around and create their own rules for health care. Abortion in America was a woman's issue. And your statements about the U.S. being founded as a Christian nation,
Oh yeah, 100%.
no, because James Madison say that America was not founded as a Christian nation.
Oh, that's what he said? Where did he say that at?
Treaty of Tripoli, 1806.
I would love to see a quote on that. What do you think about What do you think about all the states that have established Christian churches as their state-sponsored religions? What did you think about that?
That they're violating the First Amendment between the separation of state and church.
Separation of church and state is not in the Constitution, and it's not a violation of the Establishment Clause because that is at the federal level. They had that clause because you cannot establish a church at the federal level in that case because there were churches at the state level. That's why that exists. It wasn't so that we have this robust conversation as to whether or not we should be a Christian country. We most certainly are.
No, we're a secular country.
That is just so false. There's so little for backing there besides a few loose letters here and there. We are a Christian country. I'm sorry that you don't like that, but it's true.
Well, you're wrong because the founding fathers stated it.
When? When did they state we are not a Christian country? Who has ever stated that? Until even in recent time, within the last century, politicians have known we are a Christian country. Just in the last 20 years, that has been come into question as to whether or not we are a Christian country. This has been always just known.
God was only added in the 1950s. It wasn't there beforehand.
My God?
And that.
Wait, what?
Because scared during the McCartney era.
I don't know what you're saying. You were breaking up, but the McCartney era?
Yes. 1950s, the Red Scare, that's when they put one nation under God into the Pledge of Allegiance.
What about the Declaration of Independence? The mention of God there. Do you not agree with that?
The mention of God.
How about those unalienable rights that are endowed to us by our Creator? Was that created in 1950?
Do not identify of which religion. They use God as an omnibus for all religions. Not a Christian religion.
Okay. I think that you're off base because everybody was Christian. But go ahead. What do you have to say about abortion? You think that it should be allowed because of some definition from the 70s?
Before then.
Okay. Why?
Wait, repeat the question. You're breaking up as well.
I said why?
No, the beforehand. You broke up beforehand.
Your reasoning for allowing abortion is because of some definition that came to prominence in the 50s. Why should that matter?
And even Benjamin Franklin knew that abortion was a woman's issue. Hell, he created an abortion drink, 1700s.
Okay? I've never heard that before, but so
Get
what's
up.
your point?
So your modern day, so the thing is, you want to argue that we're a Christian nation from the very inception, but when the founding fathers themselves argue that we're not a Christian nation, that they themselves...
didn't argue that. That's such a falsehood.
No, they stated it. My apologies. They stated we're not a Christian.
Can you give me a quote where they said the United States of America is not a Christian nation? It's so absurd for you to say that because it doesn't exist. Because no one has ever stated that because that is absurd.
Look up the quote. James Madison, Treaty of Tripoli. Look it up. There's your quote.
What is the exact quote? I want to make sure I keep you accountable on this when I look it up later.
Now, I don't have that America, this is 90%, that the United States was not founded as a Christian nation.
Oh my gosh, I get it that you believe that, but you haven't given any evidence.
Right now, come on.
Can you point to any founding documents that said we were not a Christian nation? That pointed to the fact that this founding country was not oriented towards God. Or do you want to talk about abortion, which is what the prompt is? Either or. I don't get why this is so hard for people to grasp. It's not that difficult that we're a Christian country. It's founded by mostly Christians. Mostly Christians have lived here. Christian morality. It's not that bad.
A lot of time. I have to go, but look it up. Treaty of Tripoli, James Madison. Can you do that?
No, I'm not going to do that because that's... I'll look it up later for you. Do you have the exact quote? Like, do you have it memorized since you're citing it, or?
I already gave it to you repeatedly.
Okay.
But
do you want to talk about abortion?
Abortion is a choice for women to make.
Why?
Because, as you like to argue, God gave us free will.
Well, I don't like to... Well, I do enjoy arguing that. I don't usually argue that, but that's a true statement, yes.
Yes, so if it's a true statement, does a woman have a right to choose of her free will?
We have to restrict your free will because it's not in line with the will of God. The will of God is that all men are created equal and are guaranteed equal protections under the law.
Every pregnancy, then this wouldn't be a debate.
Sorry?
If God gave us the free will and then wanted every pregnancy to happen, this wouldn't be a debate.
Well, how so?
Because if it wasn't up to our will that he gave...
Sir, you have your will, correct, and it can be out of line with the will of the infinite good, which is to say what you ought to do. You can do what you ought not to do, and we as a society can say, don't do that. It's pretty simple.
But like I said, I have work. Gotta go.
All right, you take care. Have a good day at work. He said he was mixing stuff, so maybe he was drinking. I don't know. And then he got mad at me for making a joke. Come on, man. Don't take things so seriously all the time. You gotta have a little fun. He's weirding me out. Yeah, he's like... All right. Victoria Diamond. Please invite me. Oh, you want to come up, Kay? You're welcome to join. Victoria, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing good.
Good. What do you have to say, Victoria? What say you?
I'd say that abortion is a woman's choice.
Why?
because it's my body and not yours. Simple as that.
So women have the choice to unalive their children if they so please.
So what's your definition of a child? Scientifically.
Um, what's my definition of a child? The offspring of a mother and father.
All right, so what's the definition of offspring? Doesn't that mean that they have to be born first?
I would say offspring is that which
No, no, no,
comes
no,
from
no,
a
no,
mother and
not
father.
like no, not like your own definition. I mean like generally accepted by all of society. Since you want to argue
Well, here's the
society
interesting thing is
tell
that
people.
if we look at different sciences, if we look at biology, there is a definition of when life begins, when you are an offspring. That would be at conception. But what's interesting about the way you brought up your statement is that you said that's generally accepted among members of society, which is kind of part of the issue here, is that people don't accept that definition even though it's right there. So you might say, well, I actually don't think you become a child until you're born or some other silly statement. But that actually disagrees with that science, with that area of knowledge. So I actually agree with the science there. I say that indeed, your life begins at conception, and indeed, because you are a human, you are a child from that point. That's how I see it. How do you see it? Hello?
She's looking it up. God,
Victoria, don't run, okay?
This is
Don't run
I'm
embarrassing.
away.
here.
Pro-choicers, man.
Victoria, what? No, it's okay. It's okay. But how do you see it? Are you going to respond or what's going on here?
I keep saying things. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, now I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, good. Good.
I might have cut out or something. I'm saying that in science there are different terms for stages of pregnancy for a reason. If they accepted that you were a child from birth, there wouldn't be different terms for it.
Okay, so what are the terms they're using?
Well, we've got. One second, give me a second to remember. It's been a while since I've had to say anything like this. So when you. And like when in the gestational period, when the egg is first being fertilized, they don't call it a child from the beginning. They call it an egg, and then they call it a
No, they call it a zygote, right? That's what the term they use. They call it a human zygote.
and then it's fertilized, and that's called that.
Right.
But there are different terms throughout when you're pregnant. They don't just call it a child from the beginning.
Bro,
Okay, and those terms represent different stages in the development of a human.
Child is a colloquial
Yes, but that doesn't mean
term.
that you're automatically a child.
Child is a colloquial term. It's not a scientific term. It's just a colloquial term that we use to signify different stages in development. When you say a
Yeah, so
child,
why
that's
are
just an
we
offspring. Offspring is just something that's born out of two human. This is so simple, bro. Do you guys think? How do you not know what simple colloquial terms are? This is basic education. Basic. Do you guys think? God damn, bro.
Okay, you can't let it get to you, man. The education system's really bad. What do you think about that, Victoria? What do you think about his statement? Victoria?
Yeah, I'm currently trying to formulate a response because I'm overwhelmed.
Don't be overwhelmed. We're just having a conversation, okay? Kay, he's
Yeah.
he's passionate about this because he thinks it's wrong for people to unalive their children. Understandably so, right? Put yourself in our shoes. If people were going out and slaughtering people out in the open, you wouldn't want that to be happening. So, we get passionate about sometimes. So take your time. Think about what a child is. It's all good stuff.
So you're saying that from the very beginning, the second that an egg is fertilized, that's a child.
Oh, yes, yeah. Because is it a human? That's the question, really. Is it a human, a unique organism that we can assign to the human species? Because if it is, then what is it if it's not somebody's child and it's a human? How can a human be a non-child? That would be really weird. That'd get into some really weird thought that I could not discern correctly because it's so illogical. But
So you're saying that because it's the start of a human life, like before it's even gotten to that point to be able to start life in general, that it's automatically, it's like, it's got rights to every single, like, that you can't, okay.
It's
So you're
okay.
saying
Think about it.
because it's the very start of a human life, it automatically has the rights to life in general, even if it's at the
Oh
detriment to
yes,
the mother
most
or
definitely yes.
to.
Most definitely yes.
So do you have exceptions for abortion, or just in general at
Not
like?
really. I don't think that you really ever need an abortion. If you want to say medical
Oh,
situations
so
require an abortion,
yeah.
sure, I'll give that exception, right? If
Okay,
somehow
so
you're
there
going to
is an
lose your life,
exception for abortion.
right? Sure, sure.
So, no, you're saying that there's an exception for an abortion if it's in a medical emergency. So
Yeah, but
does
we have
that
to. You can
negate
say
does
medical
that
emergency.
negate the
Kate
fact that you're
Cox, hold
saying
on.
that a
Kate
child
Cox
can
said
die?
she had. Kate Cox said she had a medical emergency and that she had to go to a different state to have an abortion. But that's a complete lie. She
So
didn't
if
have
an
a
egg
medical.
is
Hold on, she
fertilized
didn't.
within the
Kate
fallopian
Cox, hold on. Let me
tube.
just explain why this gets kind of interesting. Because Kate Cox said, you know Kate Cox, right? The old man that inhibits the, or sorry, that lays in the White House currently, Joey R. Biden. He brought Kate Cox to the State of the Union because, you know, being a Catholic, for whatever reason, he's the most pro-choice president we've ever seen. So he brought Kate Cox. What happened with Kate Cox? Well, Kate Cox got an abortion because her child was disabled. That her child that was developing within her was going to come out disabled. And so that was her medical emergency, to unalive her disabled child. She didn't need an abortion. Her life wasn't at risk. And we know this because one of the reasons we know this is because when they argued this case in Texas, her own lawyers acknowledged that her life wasn't at risk. Because if her life was at risk, under Texas law, she could have gotten an abortion. But her life wasn't at risk. So she left the state so she can murder her child somewhere else. And so that's why it gets kind of hairy when we talk about a medical
Okay,
emergency,
let me
because
give you an
in that
okay.
case, even the President of the United States says that's a medical emergency when it most certainly is not.
Okay, let me give you a medical emergency. You're saying that from the second the egg is fertilized, it's a human life and it should not be ended. What if that egg is fertilized within the fallopian tubes and it's unviable
You
pregnancy?
mean like an ectopic pregnancy?
Yes.
Yeah, you do what you
Are
can
you
to save
saying
the
that an
baby
abortion
and the
shouldn't
mother,
happen
and
then?
if you can't save the baby, you save the mother. You treat both people as people. Yes.
Yeah, but if you were to allow that pregnancy to actually develop, it would be a detriment to both.
Yeah, if there's no way to save the child, then you have to unalive the child, unfortunately.
So that's an
Sad situation.
exception.
Sure.
Oh, wait, so you're saying that no, you're saying that if there was a way to save the child within that situation, even if it was to hurt the mother.
Oh yeah, you save the child. You do what you can to save the child. You don't unalive the mother to save the child because that's a confliction of the rights of life. But you do whatever you can to care for the mother and care for the child. Let me ask you this, because I know this is so fascinating to talk about these, non-typical cases and that don't get to the heart of the issue. In the vast majority of cases where women are just electing to off their children at 11 and 12 weeks, why should they do that, and why should they be allowed to do that?
Probably because they don't believe that life starts at the right at fertilization like you do.
Okay. So, it does. But...
Science doesn't back that.
Oh, really? Really? Science doesn't back that? I'm pretty sure
cannot give
science
you
does. Do you want to
specific
show me some science
statistics.
that doesn't back that? Also, this is typically what the baby looks like when most women are
The-
unaliving them. Do you see that? So that's not just a clump of cells. What does that look like to you? Let me ask. What species does that look like it's of? I guess that's kind of a difficult question when you're looking at a baby in the womb, but it's going to look like a few different things. But you're not growing like a monkey or something, right? You're growing a human. So there's the child in the womb at 12 weeks. 11, 12 weeks, most women are having their abortions then. That's when they're choosing to off their children. That's really what we're talking about. Why is that justified? Why should we allow women to do that?
I just don't believe that it's a full life at that point in that pregnancy.
What would make it a full life?
I'm trying to go back to like the traits that you have to be considered alive in biology. So you've got homeostasis. Can that baby support itself by itself? Like, can its body do that? Because that is a sign of life.
So you're going to argue because the baby has to be sustained by the mother in the womb. It's not alive.
I'd say it's not a fully alive thing, yes. At that point in time,
That
it'd
is
be
wild.
closer. I don't want to. I don't want to call it a parasite because that can be taken in a wrong way, and I don't mean it like that. But it's closer to that than it is to actually being a fully alive person.
What is a fully alive person?
Somebody who can function by themselves. Can they can feed themselves. Their body can take care of getting rid of its excrement and stuff by itself. It doesn't need the help of anything else.
Okay, so how does a 2-day-old meet that definition?
Its
The
body
exact, the
handles all of
precise
its
language that you use does
Yeah,
not need the help of anybody else. How does a 2-day-old meet
its
that definition?
body doesn't need the help of anything else. I'm not
No.
saying that a
That's false
2-year-old
too.
should be able.
Don't
I
be
am not
mistaken. Hold on,
saying that.
Victoria. Hold on. That's false too. The 2-day-old child, most definitely, its body needs things, right? It needs food. It needs nourishment,
Yeah, I'm not saying that.
right? But you're saying that to be alive, you must what? Be fully independent. That your
Your
body
body
doesn't need
must be
things.
fully. Yes, your body needs to be able to sustain itself. I'm not saying a baby
Okay,
needs to
how
go
does
out
a
and get its
baby
own
outside the
food
womb
and clean
sustain itself?
itself.
How does it do it? How does it sustain itself then? Otherwise, it
Its
won't be alive
bodily
under your definition.
functions can sustain that body if given the right nutrients.
If given the right nutrients. It
Yes.
requires nutrients, just like
Yes.
the baby in the womb requires nutrients to survive.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yes. Yeah, but that's different.
How is it different?
Cuz the baby within the womb is leaching stuff off of the mother.
And so does
I'm
the
not,
baby
like,
outside the womb. Right? When you're a mother,
no.
if you ask any
No.
mother, right, and mothers love their children, which is a beautiful thing. They do. They will the good of their children. But if you talk with any mother, they're not going to tell you that their baby's not a big pain in the butt. They're not going to tell you that their baby doesn't take a lot of their time. They're not going to tell you that they have to
Yeah, but
give
that's
tons of their
different.
resources to their
That's
child.
taking care of a child outside the womb. That's not the baby taking whatever it needs while it's inside of you and you not having a choice about it.
It's the same thing outside the womb. You really don't have a
No,
choice
it's
either.
not.
I
No, it
have
is
a beautiful niece, and I remember when she's 3, 4, but
I'm
when
not like,
she was a newborn, hold on, uh,
wow.
she didn't care about my brother and my sister-in-law. Many sleepless nights were required, and it was not up to them whether or not they had to get up and take care of that child. They had to, because that was their child and they're obligated to take care for it. And furthermore, they loved her. They still do, but you get what I'm saying. You don't have a choice to sustain your child's life. You have to, otherwise your child's going to pass away. It's the same thing. You just want to be able to unalive the child because you think it's it's a lesser crime if the child's in the womb. But I don't see it that way. I still see it as a child.
I think that if it's not fully developed, it's not a child yet.
Oh, so the 2-day-old child who's not also fully developed, they're not a child?
That is completely different.
How is that completely
Outside the
different?
womb
You're
is
not fully
completely
developed at
different.
2 days.
Outside of the womb is completely different than while it's still developing within the first stages of its development.
I don't even know what do you mean by that?
I mean that when the egg is first fertilized and it's going through the first few weeks of developing into a fetus, it's not a child yet. It's not. It's
What is
cells
it?
growing.
What are the
It
cells
is
of?
cells growing.
What are the
I
cells
can't
of?
remember. I
What
can't
species
remember.
are the cells? You don't remember?
Obviously human. Obviously
They're
human.
human cells. Do the cells make a unique organism?
Yes.
Okay, so they're human cells that make up a unique organism. What is that organism?
A human.
Okay, so it's a human. Who are the human's parents?
Humans.
Okay, so how is it not a child? What am I missing here, Victoria? Please enlighten me. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but that sounds like a child to me.
I don't even know how to make a response towards that because you're just completely
James, can I ask her a question?
Okay,
yeah.
it's your world, man. Go ahead.
Victoria, do you think like somebody's fetus is like an intrusion or something? Do you think that's an intruder that's unwanted?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would just say that like if somebody makes the choice within the first few weeks when it's not even like say it hasn't even developed pain receptors, its brain activity isn't doing anything and it has doesn't even have a heartbeat. I wouldn't consider that alive. I wouldn't consider that to have any rights upon a woman making a decision about her own body.
Okay, so what must somebody have in order to be given the right to life?
I mean, personally, it's not my decision, but for me, I'd say that once it gets to the point where the fetus can feel pain, it's showing brain activity, and it
So you're
can.
fine with cutting it out, you're fine with cutting off abortion at 8 weeks because they can feel pain at 8 weeks.
Then yeah, I'd probably say that.
Okay. So what about people outside the womb who can't feel pain? Do they have a right to life?
Yes, if that's the decision that they make.
So what about
The issue that arises when you talk about abortion is that you're taking away the mother's right to decide what happens to her body.
it's not
It's
it's not
somebody
right.
out
What right is being taken away?
if somebody who is their own person makes the decision that they don't want to be alive anymore and they can't feel anything, that's only infringing on their bodily autonomy. You are infringing on a woman's bodily autonomy when you make a decision for her.
We're infringing on a woman's bodily autonomy.
Yes,
Can
if
you give
you
me a
say you
case?
can't
Can
get
you
an
can you give
abortion
me
because
Yeah,
it's
I
against
get
what
it.
I
I
believe,
understand. I understand.
okay,
I hear this same
all right.
phrase about 1,000 times a day. Trust me.
Well, it
Okay.
obviously doesn't
So
sink in.
can you give me a case? No, it doesn't sink in for you. You didn't even know what an embryo was. You didn't even know what life was. And then you came
I
up here
know
and you
what
said
they
life
are.
doesn't
I'm
begin at.
sorry, I can't remember the terms off the top of my head when I'm
Okay, if that's
overwhelmed.
fine. Can you give me any case outside of pregnancy where it's justified to use your body to unalive another human being?
Self-defense.
Sure, but we give the medical exception. What else? Any other case?
I'd say no, not unless they
So
wanted
why
to.
do you give this special privilege when it comes to women using their body to unalive another human being? Why?
Because that body's within their body.
Okay.
Their body has priority.
Why does their body have priority?
Because it's the host.
What do you mean by the host?
I mean that it's their body making it happen in the first place. It's not as if there's a fetus outside of their body that they're going up to and killing.
That's n- that's
You're
not the point
like,
of the question. The point of the question is if you can't tell me any other scenario outside of self-defense, outside the womb, where it's justified to use your body to unalive another human being, why is it
yeah.
justified in the case of pregnancy?
And I'm telling you it's justified because her body is the host.
Okay, so it's justified because the mother is carrying the child?
Yes, it's justified. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any kind of moral argument against certain types of abortion, but you don't get to just say as a blanket, yes, all abortion's illegal because I believe that life starts at this point and it's wrong.
When the
That's an
question about
ethics
when
argument.
life begins is not a belief. There's a true fact about that statement. So regardless
Yeah,
of
and
what
you
you
have
think and what
to
I
have
think,
nuance in
there's a
that
fact about
argument
that,
because it's not
right?
just complete
Right.
fact.
Now, the question is not about when life begins. The question is about when people grant rights to those human lives. Okay? So for people
Yeah.
like you, you're going to grant rights, the right to life, you're going to grant that at some different stage in development based on X characteristics. So far, that the whole time that you've been up here, you've been saying that, well, they don't have this, and they don't have this, and they don't have this, so therefore they're unjustified And every time you posit those points, James just gives you a counterexample to people outside the womb. And then you say, oh, no, but that's different. So it's not
Yeah, it
really
is
about those
different.
character. Okay, what's different about it? What's the principal difference
The
between
principal
wait, hold on,
difference.
listen to the question.
Gosh,
What
I've
is the
said it
principal
multiple
difference?
times.
You're not listening to the question. What is the
Okay, say it.
principal listen, damn. What is the principal difference between a day-old child and a second before being born? What's the principal difference?
I say the principal difference is that she's still within the body, but I wouldn't say that that's not a child at that point.
At what point does it become a child?
If it's getting ready to be born, that's a fully developed baby.
No, it's not. We're not even you know you're not developed, right? How old are you?
You're about to make the argument that my brain isn't fully developed until
Yes,
25.
human beings
Yeah.
are consistently
Yeah,
developing
I
throughout their
know. I
life.
know.
Yes. So there's no such thing as fully developed. I don't even know what that means. What is a fully developed human being? Do you have to have a certain amount of body parts? Do you have to
I'm
hit a certain threshold before you're fully developed? What does it mean to be fully developed?
I'm talking fully developed as in within the womb.
That doesn't make sense.
Yes,
There's
it
no such
does.
thing as a baby
Yes,
is
it
gonna
does.
no, babies still continue to grow
Yes, I know.
outside the womb. They don't stop development once they exit the birth canal. The development continues.
Yeah, I understand that, but the process in which they are growing within the womb ends.
Okay? So,
So, what's your point?
how is that relevant?
What's your point?
What do you mean, how is that relevant?
I don't understand your point. What are you saying?
Now I don't even know how to make my point because I think we're all confused.
No,
What
we're
do you
not. Like,
what
this
kind
is the equivalent. This is the equivalent, Victoria, of you saying the 5-day-old child is relying on the mother when the mother is alone with the child for a week at a time, and that the mother has to sustain its life, and therefore the mother should have the right to unalive the child. And then you saying, well, in this case, the child is just relying on the mother. They have this relationship where the mother has to give the child its resources. And then we say, why should they have the right to unalive that child in that case? And you say, well, because the child is relying on the mother. It's like, okay, we get that there's a relationship there. We get that in pregnancy, there's a biological reality to pregnancy that is unique. But we're asking, what's the principle behind this right that a woman gets to unalive her child?
Yeah, let me ask her a
Well,
scenario,
a
Victoria.
child relying on somebody else outside the
Go ahead,
womb
Kat.
is different than when a child is first starting to grow in the first stages within
Okay.
a
I would say
womb.
why, but go ahead,
Okay.
Kat.
So Victoria, do you have any children or family members?
Yes, I have sisters.
Okay. So let's say hypothetically, God forbid this ever happened, but let me just put you in a hypothetical, and I'm using your family just so you can sort of conceptualize it, more
Yes,
like
I
closer to
understand.
you, right? So
Hmm.
let's say your sister, all of a sudden, something tragic happens to her, goes to the doctor, they pronounce her brain dead, but actually they find out that it's a misdiagnosis and they say that she's going to wake up in 9 months. Okay. Is it okay to pull the plug?
No.
Why not?
Well, if they said it's a misdiagnosis and she's not brain dead, then she's still alive.
What makes her alive?
Brain activity, working body. Uh,
Her body's not working. She's just sitting there laying in the bed, slumped up.
her body's still working regardless of whether or not she's moving it. Her
Okay.
bodily functions are still working.
Well, that's semantic, but sure. So why is it not wrong to just pull the plug? Because it's deprivational, right? You're depriving her of some potential future experience that she might have, correct?
Yes, I can give that to you.
Okay. That goes for any other case of unaliving outside of self-defense. It's because it's deprivational. You're depriving them of some potential future experience that they have. So when James and I and everybody else are making these arguments, we're saying that it's bad to use your body to unalive the other fetus because it's deprivational, okay? And you can give all these different markers and you can give all these different lines that you draw at what makes life valuable, but it's always going to fall short and become inconsistent because we can just give you cases of people outside the womb, but you're just going to say, well, no, that's different, even though it's not principally. Do you see what I'm saying? So the reason why it's bad is because it's deprivational. You're depriving your own offspring of a potential future in the sake of your own bodily autonomy. You ever thought about it like that? How would you feel if you deprived your 1-year-old child because you didn't have the finances to take care of him? Does that sound right to you?
No, it doesn't, but I wouldn't kill my child if it,
So why would
like,
you kill your unborn child?
it, for me personally, it would depend on what stage they are at in pregnancy. I don't believe, personally, that a child is worth being, like, I don't have any say over them until they reach a certain point.
James, I'm gonna get back to work, but
Okay.
And that's my whole point here. It should be between your doctor and yourself. I don't care what
Yeah,
other
but you
people have
can't
to say.
really substantiate that at all. That's the problem.
Well, I'd say that a doctor who has had to go through the study for it would have a better say over it than anyone else.
Well, what kind of doctor?
Probably somebody that has had to go into more study on pregnancy itself, like
Do you
a
think that
gyno
our
or
politicians should be fully comprised of medical doctors?
no, but they should take the medical community's opinion.
What can the
before
medical
they make their
community
own.
tell us about the abortion issue?
The medical community can tell you what limits you should put on it and why. It shouldn't be
No,
based
actually,
on what you feel.
no, it cannot. Because that's a question of our morality and when we think it's okay to unalive a child. That's
Okay,
the
yeah,
wrong
so
answer.
this
The
is a
correct
moral
answer is
argument,
this.
which you
The
shouldn't.
medical community can tell us a few things about abortion. They can tell us what an abortion is. They can give us the basic nature of abortion, tell us how they're going to commit these abortions, how they're going to go about it. The medical community or the biological community as a whole can tell us when life begins. They can tell us the biological nature of a human. Those are the things that you can pull from the medical community. But you can't pull from the medical community an understanding of, a full understanding, that is, of why it's wrong to unalive a child. That comes from somewhere else. Even in the medical community, in the medical field, they
Yes.
utilize ethics, which is not
Yes.
a science from biology or the medical
Well, I'm
community.
aware
It's
of
some
what
other
ethics is.
science. So it's silly. What you're saying is silly. We should just leave this up to doctors. That's the equivalent of saying that
I
we
didn't
should
say
just
leave it
leave
up to
we should just
only
leave
doctors,
lockdowns up to
but
Dr. Fauci. Like, what does he know
they
about public
shouldn't.
policy?
Okay, I'm not saying it should only be up to doctors, but it shouldn't just be up to politicians who will let whatever they believe be a part of what makes their decision. You have to have multiple sources to make a decision like that. Multiple viewpoints. You can't just say I
Yeah,
believe
that's what we're
it's
doing. And that's what Kay laid out, and that's what I've laid out. We've laid out different sorts of reasoning. We've used different hypotheticals. We're trying to come to a solution here. We think we have a pretty good argument. And you are just
so your
saying broad
argument is
statements.
that no, you're also making broad statements though.
No, I'm
with
being
your
very particular when I make a statement that relates directly to the child's life, and that is that we should not be unaliving children under any circumstance.
But I'd say probably 25 minutes ago, you already accepted that there are exceptions to that.
Yes, there are very
There
few
are
exceptions,
but you said that, but you just said a second ago that under any circumstances. Do you see where we run into a problem here?
good catch. Let me rephrase. In 98%, 99% of the
where's that
situations,
statistic
there
from?
is no reason
No,
to unalive a child.
I'd like to hear a source on that one.
What do you mean a source on that one? Look it up.
Well, you just threw out a statistic to support your argument, and there's no proof for it.
What percentage of abortions do you think are elective? It's around 97, 98%. I don't know the exact source off the top of my head, but it's out there.
Yeah, but you weren't giving me a statistic on how many were elective. You were giving me a statistic on which circumstances it should be allowed. Weren't you?
No, I wasn't giving you I was giving you a statistic on the majority of abortion cases. I think that in the vast majority, they should not be allowed, yes.
Yep. Okay. So under the vast majority, you think that they shouldn't be allowed, but you do hold exceptions. So how
Indeed.
would you phrase legislation to surround those exceptions?
I don't know. That's a difficult question to ask somebody that's not currently in the position to do so and has
So
not
you
taking,
so
hold
you
on,
are
who has not been
discussed.
taking wisdom from our political leaders, because you definitely need wisdom when you're crafting these laws.
So
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 I
you're
don't know.
sitting here saying that abortion should be banned flat out, even though you can say there are exceptions to that.
Yeah, I mean, there are rules and rules have exceptions. True. Yep.
Yeah.
Not
So why
all
are we
models
arguing
are
that?
bad.
Why
Some
are we
models are
saying
good.
that abortion should be banned flat out when you know there are exceptions for that?
Because I can do that. I can say that I have a rule and I have an exception to the rule.
Yeah, but you're saying that abortion should be banned regardless all across the board, even though there are exceptions for it.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I do have
No,
exceptions.
you are, because your point is saying ban abortion. You're
What are
not
you
saying
trying to get out
anything.
of this little conversation right now at the end here?
What I'm trying to get out of this conversation is that you have no way to make that decision on behalf of women.
I do,
No, you
and I
don't.
shall. You shall not unalive your children. You may think that's okay. You may think that that's right. You may think that that is your right given to you by your weird God that does not stand for justice. But
Oh,
that is not your right,
So
and
we're
you will not
bringing
unalive your
God. We're
children, not in
bringing
this
God
country.
into a factual argument.
Well, where do your rights come from, madam?
Well, which rights are we talking about? Are we talking about
Your
the rights
rights
that
that
you
are
say
given
that
to you. How do you have rights? Who
by
gives
our
them to you?
government?
Where does the government get them from? Who gives the government the right to give rights?
It gave itself the right.
Oh, so an institution can give itself the right. So can you give yourself
Well,
your own rights?
our
Does that make any sense? You're saying the
okay. What are you
government
trying
gave
to get at?
itself the right to govern. It wasn't that
Our
this right came
country
from
came
somebody else. It
together.
wasn't
Our
that man
country
needs to be
came.
restricted so that it can be pushed towards what's virtuous. The government in itself
Oh, okay.
gives
Okay. So
itself all of its rights.
you're saying that we should base everything off of Christianity, basically.
That's
This
not what
is a
I'm
Christian
saying.
argument.
I think we should. Here's something that might blow your mind. I think we
Oh,
should
okay.
base everything off of what's most reasonable and what's most true. And inevitably, if we are on that pursuit and we're honest about it, you will end up finding Christianity, because Christianity is most reasonable and is most true. That being said, the focus should be
Okay.
on reason and truth.
So why would you say that Christianity is the most reasonable and the most true?
This isn't a religious live, but
Oh,
Jesus
well, then you
Christ did
shouldn't bring
indeed rise
religion
from the
into an
dead,
argument
and
on
we will
abortion.
celebrate that soon at Easter, and pretty good evidence for that. But the idea of an infinite good and the arguments for God are fairly compelling and make the whole world make sense.
Even in comparison to other religions across all over the world that makes sense
Oh,
to
yes,
them.
indeed, yes. Christianity is the most reasonable religion that has ever existed and will ever exist because it's true. Jesus Christ
Because it's
truly
true.
did
How is
rise
it
from
true?
the dead.
How is it true?
I just explained there's evidence for it, and I believe the
Well,
evidence.
and what's the evidence?
Jesus Christ rose from the dead.
Can you
And
substantiate that
the
with
thousands
facts?
of years of church history that have reasoned the truth that we've come to accept.
Well, you've come to accept.
Yeah, I've come to accept
This
what is
is a
true.
free
That is true.
country if
Yep.
you don't remember that.
Again, I'm not forcing you to be religious. You're just
No,
asking
but
me.
you're also making an argument that you would hope to be like that everyone would have to follow based on your moral and religious beliefs.
I don't think you're understanding what I've said. What I said was this: Christianity is the most reasonable and true religion that has ever existed, and I have no shame in being a Christian.
Yeah.
Furthermore, I believe that as a country, we should fight and crawl to what is most true and is most real about our world. We should
So
try to
theology.
understand that to our best
Theology
ability.
is what you're saying.
And I just believe that through that reasoning, through that fight to understand truth, you will end at the doors of Christianity. That's what I believe.
So you believe as a country we should strive to make laws that follow Christianity?
No, again, I think that you're
No, what you're
misunderstanding the
saying right
language.
now. No, what
Let me be
you
even
said
more
in a
clear.
roundabout. Hey,
Madam,
can you
when
let
you
me?
argue for issues in this country, this is something you don't understand. You need to be able to substantiate and use reasoning. Something you haven't done
Yeah.
in the last hour of talking to you is you haven't been able to give a reasonable position, you haven't been able to make a good argument, and you haven't said anything really that's been true. Those three things are necessary if we're going to make a more perfect union and if we're going to try to understand the world around us. All I am saying is that if we are honest about that and we're open to all the evidence and we're open to all the facts about the world, I believe that we will end at Christianity. That's what I think is going to happen. Am I telling, again, you can fire back with your talking point as to I want everybody to be Christian or I want the country to be ran solely from a basis of Christianity. All I am saying that is that if we are reasonable, I believe we will end with Christianity. That's all. Which is to say that we will end up reflecting some sort of Christian morality, which most definitely is the best version of morality that has ever existed. Yes.
Okay, I can give you that one. All right. So I guess let's bring it back to the main point, which was to ban abortion in general. And you believe that a child is a child regardless of what stage it's at.
Of course,
So
yes.
you believe that we should do everything in our power to make sure that that child has what it needs to survive and to have a good life. Do you not?
Oh, of course. I mean, we do everything that is reasonable to do.
So do you believe that that should stop outside the womb?
No, it should not stop outside the womb. We do everything that is reasonable to do to help that child, yes.
So what's reasonable if that mother couldn't take care of that child and was forced to have it?
That's why we have adoption, right? That's why you can have somebody else raise your kids in this country.
What if the mother wants the child and can't take care of it?
There are organizations that do help mothers.
Should the government do that?
The government does do that. We have a welfare system.
Say that mother works 24/7 and can't take care of that child while she's at home. Should the government provide services for that? Like for
See,
every
I think this
mother?
is interesting, this conversation that you're bringing up, because I think that ideally we restore the nuclear family so that there aren't mothers that have to work and that there aren't mothers that have to decide between unaliving their children and keeping their children. I think that is really the root of the problem. So I would hope that the government would put in policies that help shape the culture so that it values mothers and values women for who they are and allows them to take on this beautiful gift of motherhood and raise their children. That's what I would like to see the government to do. If you're going to ask me, single mothers who have a terrible man in their life that impregnated them and leaves their family behind, which is such a disgusting act to do, what we should do for those mothers, of course we should help those mothers. But I think we should craft a law and make a society that values motherhood and values people in those situations. So it's complex.
All right, yep, I can agree with that.
Great. Anything else?
Nope. I will say that I am probably not knowledgeable and I don't have the right statistics on me to make a compelling argument for you, and I'm sorry for that. But
That's okay. You don't need to apologize, but you also don't need statistics to make an argument necessarily. Statistics are a science that you can pull from, but it's a group of knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily mean something you can just live in statistics. Right? I mean, it's a tool you can use and you can use it to your benefit if you'd like, but even statistics sometimes aren't correct. I tell this to people, certain social studies, like studying happiness or depression, those don't always amount to correct results, right? They can be bad studies. So I'm just saying you can use other reasoning too. You don't have to just go look up statistics after this. You can read maybe philosophical literature on the topic or, listen to some speeches from pro-lifers who have laid out the argument maybe better than I have. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I'd say that if we're not using those bases of science as like to support the argument, then it's really just about what you feel.
Can you come to a conclusion that's not rooted in modern science?
I mean, yeah, but that would be personal. Like, that's not...
What about the unaliving of somebody outside the womb? Schmurder. Can you come to that conclusion without relying on modern science?
Like, what, that murder is just wrong in general?
Yes. Yes.
I can't agree with that.
You can't agree that...
I think that there are instances where murder is the option that people should go with.
When are those instances? That's a pretty radical view.
Yeah, well, when society as a whole can agree that a person is evil and that they have a bad...
That wouldn't be schmurder. That would be justified unaliving.
That's still murder. Well,
No,
schmurder,
it would.
sorry.
No, it's okay. It wouldn't be though. It would be justified. Schmurder is unjustified.
I'm not sure that that's part of that definition, but I'll accept
Well, what's
that.
your definition for it? Maybe yours will be better.
Murder is just somebody else unaliving someone else. That's what it is.
No, it's not. That's called unaliving, or the actual term. But you know what I mean.
Oh, okay, never mind. Yep.
Yeah. So, do you think that definition? Do you think that understanding of that concept has to be rooted in modern science?
Wait, so murder... Okay, so you're agreeing with me that it's okay to unalive someone else if it's justified, like, for evil reasons, but it's not justified for a mother to end a pregnancy if she thinks her reasons are justified?
She'd have to give proper, ample reasons as to why it's justified to unalive her innocent child. Generally speaking, we don't unalive innocent people in this country. You have to have justification when you unalive somebody. That's why it's so absurd for a group of justices to say that you have a privacy clause when it comes to unaliving
Well,
somebody.
I can agree with that, though. I can agree that there should be justifiable reasons to end your pregnancy, but it shouldn't be banned outright.
Well, what about the unjustified reasons? You think you should be able to end your pregnancy when it's unjustified?
Depending on what stage it is.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're wanting me...
Just
okay,
understand just slow down. Think about the words I'm meaning, or the words I'm saying. Hold on, all words have meaning. When I say unjustified,
yes,
that means it doesn't have justification.
Yes.
So if somebody doesn't have justification for the act they're doing, should they have the right to do that act?
I don't think that you need a justifiable reason at a certain point in pregnancy. Once it
That's
gets
absurd.
past
That's
a
also
certain
absurd,
point,
even for a pro-choicer.
in
Because
your
pro-choicers
opinion-
will
in your
argue that you
opinion,
have the justification to unalive the child
Yeah,
on the
in
basis
your
of your thoughts.
opinion, in your opinion, it's unjustifiable. Regardless, like you need to have a justifiable reason at any point in pregnancy.
Yes, because you
I
have
don't
to justify
believe that,
your
'cause
actions.
you
That's how
think
this
a
works.
You think a child should have equal rights at every point in pregnancy, and I don't, and that's the discrepancy here.
Okay, but you still have to justify your actions. We're not just going to allow people to do actions without justification.
I'm not saying that. But
Well,
there
you
is
are
a
kind
point,
of saying
but there
that
is
because
a
when I
point-
ask you, can you have
there
an
is a
abortion
point-
without justification, you say, sure, who cares? No need
At a
justification.
That is what I already said, that there should be justifiable reasons, but only after a certain point. Like, once that baby is developed to a point that it has, like, a heartbeat and it looks almost fully like a child or a baby, or it has a heartbeat and it has brain activity and stuff like that, then that's a point where you need a justifiable reason to end that life because it's viable. But if it's a tiny little sack of cells...
Okay, you're
or it's like a
confused. You're
little-
confused. It's okay.
I'm
but
not
you're
conf- oh,
you
I'm not
are
confused.
you are confused because you're saying that you need a justification when you have what you believe is a proper justification, but in other times you don't have a justification, so you're saying, oh well, in those cases you don't need a justification. Doesn't make any sense.
You don't.
Your principle
Oh,
should be
yes,
that
yes.
you always need a justification and that the justification just changes from case to case, whether or not you have it or not. That's what you're trying to say, but I don't think you understand what you're even saying.
No, that is what I'm saying. I'm saying that at a certain point in pregnancy, you don't need a justifiable reason because it doesn't have an effect on that.
Okay,
that
well, we've already gone through the whole
fetus.
thing, and I just think you need to learn how to think better and go think about the issue.
No, I'm making my point perfectly clear. You're
You're
just
not,
disagreeing
because
with
you're
it and
saying that
trying
you
to
can
make it look
unalive a
stupid.
child at certain points for a non-justifiable reason.
Yes, at the beginning of the pregnancy, before
Why?
the
How
child
can you
has
can you
gotten
tell
to
me how it makes sense we allow people to do actions of unaliving a human without justification? How does that make
because
sense?
it's not a developed human yet. It hasn't been born. It hasn't gotten to the point in the pregnancy where it is starting to feel and look like a child.
It doesn't matter. It is a child.
To you, it doesn't matter.
No,
To
stop,
you, it
stop.
does not matter.
It doesn't matter to me because it is a child, and we already walked through how it was a child, and you kind of seem to recognize
Yeah, but
that
right
after
now
we
you're
walked through it.
making a argument based on your beliefs rather than in fact.
How is it based off my beliefs and not in
You're
fact?
saying it's a child, point blank.
It
and
is
that
a child.
I can
Is it a human? Do you want to do this again? You really want to go through this again? We already came to agreement on this. Why are you denying it now?
Because
I have
don't-
this on tape. We literally agreed to this.
Yes, I'm aware that I agreed that you can use that term as a generality, but there are different stages.
Indeed, there are different stages of development. Well said.
I don't believe that in the first few days or first couple of weeks of pregnancy where it's a little sack of cells growing that it has a right to life.
That's bizarre because I don't believe that you have a right to life in your first 25 years of life. Because
Well,
you don't have the wisdom of an 80-year-old. That's basically what you're saying. You're saying that because of some characteristic or some understanding of that person's humanity, they don't get the right to life. That's discrimination on the basis of whatever characteristics and what your abilities are. It's wrong. But
there
yes.
I will bring up again that there are reasons that that's different than if you're describing an 80-year-old or an 80-year-old saying a 25-year-old doesn't have the right to life.
How is that different?
Again, that body is not within the other body. It's not affecting that other body. It's not
and then
possibly
now we
damaging
can
that
sidestep
other
and talk
body.
about a different part of this issue. But in that
Oh,
case
actually,
I brought up,
can I give you a personal experience?
whatever you'd like.
My mother had me and had a hemorrhage when she had me and was told not to have any other kids or else it would destroy her uterus. She did, and she hemorrhaged with both of them, almost died. And ended up having to get a hysterectomy because she had endometriosis. I don't want to have a child for that reason because it could kill me. But if I got pregnant and decided to have an abortion, are you saying that I shouldn't do that because it's prioritizing my health?
You should not unalive your children, yes.
So if I get pregnant and I catch it within 2 days, I shouldn't take like a morning after pill or get an abortion right then and there.
You should have your baby, yes. And as the baby develops and as
So,
you
yeah, a
develop
woman shouldn't be
yourself
able-
and as you
a
both
woman
work
shouldn't be
together,
able to
you're
make-
hold on, the mother
Yeah.
and child relationship, we see it get played out and you're going to your doctor visits. If it at some point somehow it becomes a dangerous situation for you, then it has become a dangerous situation for you, and we view it as it is. But you don't just say, well,
So if it's a dangerous situation
pregnancy sometimes
for me,
results
if it's a dangerous situation for me, then you're saying the woman's life is the priority over the child.
No, and I don't say that, and I've never
No.
said that.
Oh.
Hold on, just stop for a moment. I don't say that, and no one ever says that. It's just because you are unable to understand what we're saying. We're basically saying, or simply saying, that the mother has a right to life and the child has a right to life. They're both humans. They're
Yeah,
both
but I'm
valuable.
asking you, at what point does the mother's life have more of a priority?
It never
Never.
really has more of a priority. It has equal
No, it
priority,
does.
and
It
dilemmas
definitely
come
does.
about. No, there's never a
If the
situation where we
mother's
say
life- if
this
the
mother's life is more.
If the mother is dying,
Okay. I don't know what exactly you mean by that, but
and
okay.
it's before the pregnancy, it's before the child is viable outside the womb,
Okay.
are you saying that the mother's life is not a priority?
I've never said and will never say that the mother's life is not a priority because she is a
You
human.
just said it's not about being a priority. You said that regardless, both have a
No,
right
so
to life.
you actually
There's no
rudely just kept
priority.
talking, and I think you missed that point. Let me be
No,
more
I
clear
heard
for.
what you said. You're saying your whole argument is
Okay,
that every
stop
time you make
talking.
a
Stop
point.
talking. This is what I said. I said that both people are viewed equally because they're both humans. We actually prioritize, quote unquote, both of their lives. Even in a medical emergency or the medical exception, it's not that we are saying that the mother is more valuable than the child. It's that we literally cannot save the child. And so we are going to save the mother. That is what we're talking about. We value both of their lives.
Yeah, but there is a priority regardless. In a medical emergency, there's always a priority for one person's life over another. Always. If one of them is going to die and the other is like if it's a choice between the two of them, one dies and the other lives, and it depends on which one you have to kill. You're saying that even the mother doesn't have a right to life in
If
that
you're
situation.
forced into a choice, you must make a choice, right?
But
If
whose
you are
choice is
left,
that
if
to
you
make?
make a
Whose
hypothetical where
choice
we
is
have
that
to
make?
hold on, if you make a hypothetical where we have to choose somebody over another person, then we have to reason what's the best choice. But that doesn't mean that
But
generally
who's
speaking, or
reasoning
that
that choice?
hold on,
Who
that
is
doesn't mean
reasoning
that
that choice?
principally speaking, that we don't value both lives equally. That doesn't poke a hole in that. That just means that there are difficult dilemmas, like oftentimes in
Yeah, but
law
you're
and
not
reason, that come up.
acknowledging who would have to make that choice. I'm trying to get you to admit, or not admit, but tell me who you think should be making the choice in that situation. Because that's going to
Well,
tell a
here's how
lot
we do
about this
it. The
argument.
doctors tell us the medical situation, which is their job, and they tell you what is going to happen to either the child or you based off of
So
different
who's
actions
making the
taken.
decision in that situation, though?
The family, I guess, because it's their child and it's
Is
very
it the mother?
tragic. It's a combination of the mother and her husband, yeah.
Well, if she's not married.
Well, whoever the father of the child is.
If the father's not there, he left.
Well, then it would just be the mother, yeah.
So it would be the mother's choice.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, and it would be purely the mother's choice only when her husband is not present, and only in the case where she doesn't have a husband or the husband is gone.
Oh, okay. All right.
Wait, Victoria, I don't know why you're arguing this. Like, we and every single one of the states in America give the medical exception. Even in the case of a ban, they would never deny, the
Well,
medical exception. So in the
they
case of the
already
mother's
have.
life,
They already have.
no, there's no state in which you're denied a medical abortion. Like if your life is in imminent danger, there's no state that's going to deny that from you. And we agree with that. And we
Are
hold that principle
have you not
consistently
been looking at the
outside the
news?
womb as well.
You
Can you
don't
tell me
see the
one
women
state that
having to
denies
leave their
medical abortion?
states because they're in the middle of a
Who, like
medical
Kate
emergency?
Cox? Did I tell you about Kate
Can
Cox?
you tell me one?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, so who, like Kate Cox? Women who are saying they need medical abortions when they just want to off their disabled children? Is that a medical? Let me ask you a
Yeah,
question.
what
If you
state?
have a kid with Down syndrome and you don't want to raise a
Yeah.
kid with Down syndrome because that's going to take more resources and time, is that a medical emergency for your life to unalive your child?
I don't agree with that, no.
Yeah, I don't agree either. Go ahead, Kay.
But that's not my point.
What
You're
state
going
is
immediately. You're
denying?
going to the other extreme and not acknowledging mine.
Well, you're we're talking about real cases that have happened. You're talking about
Yes,
medical.
and there have
You're
also
talking about
been real
You're
cases.
saying that.
There have
Hold on.
also
What you
been
said
real-
was this. You said that women are leaving states to have an abortion because of the medical necessity of it. And I gave you a specific case where a woman left a state to have an abortion
Yes.
out of medical necessity that was not a medical necessity. So I'm just pointing
That's
out that
not
even
the
in this
only
conversation,
case,
there's
though.
lots
That
of
is not
holes.
the only case.
Yeah, it's not the only case, but all the
There was a-
states
I can't
protect medical
remember her name.
necessities. And
I
if you
can't
look through
remember
these
her name, but
cases,
not
if you look through
even-
all of these cases where this is happening, what you'll find is that there are no medical necessities for these abortions. It's usually just women who want to off their children who they don't want to have.
That's not at all.
Okay, so give me a case then.
Yes, it is.
I
That's
can't
the
remember.
vast majority
Okay,
of
I
abortions.
can't remember her name, but she was all over TikTok. Not even, I'd say, probably 3 or 4 months ago. She had a child that was stillborn within her, and she couldn't get an abortion within her state. I think it was Texas or it was like Alabama or something. And she had to travel to another state to get that abortion because the courts in her state wouldn't allow her to get that abortion. They wanted her to carry that stillborn child till the end of term.
Okay, do you have the situation? That doesn't sound true
I
to me,
can't
but
remember her name.
yeah, well, if you're gonna talk about people, you should know their names and their situations.
I'm sorry, I don't have it right on me.
Who told you that? Was that Mao of China?
What?
You said you learned it on
I'm
TikTok.
not
Sorry.
okay. Yes, it was all over the news, and this woman was documenting her story on TikTok.
Oh wow! Just like Kate Cox just completely lied, and just like the president
Yeah,
of the United States completely lied about her story, is what I'm guessing. Because people lie about this stuff. Because people are evil. Yeah,
I'm not gonna say that
all
they're
making
not
sense.
evil.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the actual facts of some of these cases, or you can just believe what they say. Because whether you like it or not, people are evil, and they will justify their evil to great extents.
You do realize that banning abortion affects other types of medical care, correct? It's not just about unaliving a child.
Oh, what's it about then?
Under the definition of medical abortion is also taking care of a stillborn child while it's in the womb. That's why that situation happened.
That's why abortion came about, is because we wanted to figure out how to deal with stillborn children.
No, that's not what I said. I'm talking about the situation I brought up.
I don't know what you're saying. It doesn't make any
I'm
sense to me.
because you're not paying attention to what I'm saying. You're just
Well, I'm
saying that
definitely paying
I'm
attention.
stupid
I
and
just
I
don't
don't
understand because it's
understand what you're
nonsensical.
saying when I do.
You're not making any sense. You're saying that abortion is really just about caring for stillborns?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that medical abortion is a definition that covers multiple types of medical care. You can't outright ban it just because you think that it only applies to babies that are being
That's
unalived
what
for
an
no
abortion is.
reason.
Abortion is the unaliving of a child in the womb.
No, it's
That's what we're
not. An
talking about.
abortion, medically defined, is taking that child out of the womb, regardless of whether or not it's alive or not.
So a
You
birth?
can look it up within
So a
medical
birth?
terminology.
So a birth?
Yeah, I'd say probably
So
a
you would
forced
say
birth.
a birth, a woman giving birth to a child would be considered an abortion. That's how you define abortion.
A C-section is considered an abortion in medical terms.
It's not
Yes.
though, because that's not what we're talking about.
No, under medical terminology,
I
it is
don't
considered
care.
an
I don't.
abortion.
I don't care what the current medical terminology is, whether you're being
But
truthful or
you're
not. I do
making.
not care because I don't use medical
So you don't
terminology
think
to
abortion
decide
should
what's
be
right and
banned
wrong.
outright? So you don't think abortion should be banned outright?
Oh, most definitely, yes. Most definitely.
Well, then you'd have to redefine what those things are called within medical terminology.
Sure. Let's do it. Me and you will work together. We'll sit down. We'll redefine it. Anything else?
Not really, no.
Great.
My point was just that there are exceptions to it and it shouldn't be banned outright.
Wow, that's a genius point. You've pointed out that in nature, rules have exceptions. I agree. Well said.
But you still think that it should be banned outright?
It should be banned for the vast majority of cases, yes.
But you agree that there should be exceptions written into it?
Yes, there should be certain exceptions, yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Infidel.
Only unrequested because I thought I'd like to hear position mine over and over again.
I've never talked to you.
No, I meant like I speak about this topic a lot, so it's like it's just me.
Well,
hearing
no, she's
myself.
pro-life. She's one of our friends.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So I was just wondering if I could hear your position on the pro-life stance.
It's wrong to unalive your children.
Yeah. Okay. So would you say there's an issue with like assigning like trait arguments to why we shouldn't unalive individuals, such as like thinking?
Yes, fundamentally, because your value as a human comes from the basis that you are a human.
Okay, can you like expand upon that of like where this value is coming from when we talk about human individuals instead of like other animals? What's so significant about humans at particular points that make them so valuable?
Well, I believe in human dignity. I believe that humans are made in the image and likeness of God. And what comes with that is the idea that we can discern morality, we can reasonably think, we can use our rationality, all capabilities that no other animal on Earth possess. Other animals may possess certain parts of that. They may reflect that in certain ways, but they never get to the human. And that's why usually when we talk about other animals, we say human-like intellect, or they're human in this way, because humans are the pinnacle of creation. And so
Yeah.
I believe in human dignity. I believe that's been the precedent in the United States of America, along with many other successful nations. And I think it's a pretty reasonable model for how the world works.
So I can agree with the notion of like when we make lateral value statements, we say humans are more valuable than other animals. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Um, but I feel like actually the pinnacle of like, well, in America and also other Western nations is that I think we base like human dignities and values upon traits. Um, I think normally it could even be trivial matters like how somebody looks, appearance. Obviously, this can lead to like racial ideologies and things like that. But even then, we've like gone away from that, and we would still classify like other races as like similar to ours in appearance of like human likeness.
Yeah,
Now,
I don't know.
for
I think even in your statement, you almost maybe you don't see this, but you kind of caught yourself. We say, oh, well, we kind of vary based on traits. That's how we view humans. But well, of course, in races, that wouldn't work well. But I don't see it that way at all. I think that all humans have human dignity, no matter what your race is, or if you have a disability or not, or what stage of development you are in. All humans are viewed in that way.
um, Well, it's not necessarily the whole point of why I would like critique some views on traits simply because not necessarily because it's discrimination. It would simply because it depends on the reasoning being trivial. So it would be trivial to say that someone who looks different from I is not valuable. That would be trivial means. While saying like someone is different than me because one can think and one cannot is going to be not trivial. It's going to be meaningful. Like I would say that, for example, someone who can never think is never going to be as valuable as someone who can always think. And then we can
Yeah, that's
mediate.
pretty evil. I mean, that's
Oh,
like saying that somebody with Down syndrome that's not going to have the same intellect that I'm going to have is not as valuable as me. I think that's wrong, but you're welcome to hold that view. I don't think it's a good view.
well, I think Down syndrome people can think. So when we
Not the
talk,
level that you can think, right?
I
It's
agree.
it's severely impaired when compared to your intellect.
I agree, but I hold a vegan position, so it's not like it's a problem for me to say someone has less traits than I do, and less as good as I am. But at least they hold a specific property, such as thinking. Most animals can think, and people with Down syndrome can think. Now, there are going to be particular atypical humans who cannot think, but they're either brain dead, number one. Number two, they're in a comatose state in which it's so deep that they cannot have thought, imagery, or other types of motor functions. And then we say, okay, well, then I believe it's up to the parents or anyone who is looking after the patient. If we deem that the financial resources and other means are too much, then we can unalive this
See, I just think that your view isn't actually a good model of what is happening. Because when I look at a child that is completely useless, I don't value the child because of its current intellect. I value the child because it's a child and it's a human. I don't consider its traits in that moment, but because it is of the human species and because the nature of something is something's end, a general principle that I think works pretty well for the world, I say, well, that has human value. That being is a human. That's cool.
No, because like okay, so like for example, then if I ask the common individual, why is it wrong to punch a baby? They're not normally often going to refer to the species of the baby and say, well, it's human. They often refer to, oh, it's going to cause harm to the individual, right? And the term individual is going to be an often reference to,
Yeah, but the individual matters, right? It's
yeah,
like saying, what's the difference between, kicking a baby and kicking a dog out of the way? Immediately you will see, and if you do both things, you're going to see very different reactions from people. I would like to see a social study on that. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
I don't
agree.
buy that it's just about the self harm. I think it's about who the individual is.
Well, no, no, I don't view it's just about the self harm. I agree that humans are more valuable than any other species. That doesn't mean that. Well, if we ask the same question and say, okay, is it okay to harm a dog? Well, people are going to say, no, it's not okay, right?
It's not right.
Yeah, and so that's because it's not the main idea of the species necessarily. It's also going to be the traits it holds, such as the ability to feel harm and have that subjective experience and recognize that pain. And that's one of the other reasons why it's problematic. And so, like, sure, we can hold that humans are more
When you
valuable.
wait, hold on before you go on. What do you mean it's problematic? How is it problematic? What's problematic about the nature of that discussion? Because I feel like what I just laid out is a pretty good model for how people think, and you're saying it's problematic.
I think it's problematic because I think that your description of how people think isn't entirely accurate.
Well, no model is entirely accurate. Models
No, I meant like
in their
less accurate
definition
than
are
my
not
model.
accurate.
No, I think it's less accurate than my model.
So you think that every time somebody gets hurt, whether that be when looking at humans, right? The only thing we care about is how much harm they experience and whether or not they experience that harm. It's not that we just did an action on a human.
Well, no, I don't ever claim of the only. I don't think there's one condition for all things. Like, so I said this is one of the reasons. So I agree with the notion of humanhood, and I also added other traits that I think are a part of the conversation. While your view is just about dignity and humanhood, which is just going to apply traits as well, because you said you made statements like a future like ours when it comes to a baby, they're eventually going to have similar traits to us. Because if it, for example, a fetus
Well,
was
that doesn't necessarily matter, right? Because they are of the human species. So human dignity is not, you don't have human dignity because you're going to become James or you're going to become infidel or you're going to become the president. That's not why you have human dignity. You have human dignity because you're of the human species, and humans have proven, why they deserve dignity through what is reasonable to understand about the human, and also through revelation and understanding that we are made in the image of God. So whether or not your child is going to become super intelligent, whether or not your child has a disability, they inherit that dignity. They inherit that value.
okay, then how would you view if I freeze a fertilized embryo, right? And I never desire for it to grow, and I just keep it in this freezer for 90 years, until it eventually dies off naturally. Would that be problematic under your view?
Yeah, that would be unethical, yeah.
Okay, why?
I don't think we should be freezing children. I don't think we should be freezing any human. It's
Wait, wait,
weird.
wait. So if someone gets pregnant and if they try and give birth to this individual, they'll both die, and they freeze the embryo and then transfer it to another parent. That's not problematic under your view.
I mean, that would be problematic because you can't use women as just flesh for you to utilize to grow a child. If you're talking about transferring somebody's child to a surrogate, you don't treat people like surrogates. That's wrong.
Wait. So do you think that the entire process is wrong to transfer, if one individual is incapable of doing so? Obviously, I don't believe in forced surrogacy, right? But if there are going to be women out there who want children, but their man is infertile, for example, like why would it be problematic in this view to say, okay, let's freeze the embryo and then serve this order to individuals who want children?
Well, because if we're talking about IVF in particular, that institution as a whole is problematic because it leads to problematic things. Beyond
Okay.
just being against what is natural, you allow certain people to be deprived of certain things that I think you ought to have, which is, for example, having your biological parents or having both a mother and a father. You can deprive a child from one of those people. I
But
think that
if
that's all wrong. I think that picking babies out of a catalog, that's also wrong. You're viewing humans as a commodity instead of a gift from God, which is how you should view them.
Okay, so I think there can be certain things. I agree with like certain ideas, like a catalog, right? And like maybe I could view that maybe we have a sense of like randomization when people choose, and they just say they want a baby, they get an embryo, but they can't know like the specific identity of the embryo. maybe we could do something like that. But I don't know about that. I'm agnostic on that position. But I think that the alternative of at least allowing, instead of IVF children, instead of allowing like mothers who cannot get pregnant, and those who can who don't want children, like I think it would be a benefactor if we just allow those who cannot. Oh, sorry. When I said cannot get pregnant, I meant the father is infertile, for example. Like, I don't think it's problematic under this view simply because the better alternative is to at least have the born child than not. I
Yeah,
think that's
we're gonna have different views of the world because I believe in the infinite good, and I think that we should orient our lives and our culture and our society towards that, and that's what I'm going to fight for. What is infinitely good? It sounds like you might believe, maybe more utilitarian, more on this idea that there is there's more of this like common good that's not necessarily connected to what's infinitely true and what's infinitely good, what's mostly moral, but it could produce what we deem as good based off of the specific results on the specific situation we're talking about. Is that basically correct? Would you say?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I disagree. I think that everything should be oriented towards the infinite good.
Okay. Um, okay, okay, then how do you feel about the analogy of like lying is always wrong, but there are going to be contexts of where lying is good? And so obviously we should operate a
No, I mean
system.
lying is always it's wrong to lie. You shouldn't lie. Yes. Yeah, there are times where again, we have different views of the world. There are times when you might say, well, lying is beneficial, right? It might be times when you might argue that certain politicians in certain places should lie about something to mitigate any sort of distress among their people. But that doesn't mean that that action is good. And I believe in the infinite good. And I believe that everything we do should be oriented towards the infinite good. And yes, we are broken. It's a broken world. I think we both can acknowledge that we all sin and everyone is sinful. But that doesn't mean make our sin right. And that doesn't mean that we should take on our sin and just own it in light of some, I don't know, mysterious common good we're fighting for.
Well, no, that's why I wanted to finish the sentence. Like, I'm fine with the idea of like orientating a system towards a quote unquote infinite good. But there are going to be, and you would also noted that even if we enlist an action to be wrong, IVF, we can still say that in certain cases it should be allowed.
Well, no, I don't think it should ever be allowed.
Well, wait, okay, so in the idea of infinite good of infinite bad of lying, you would agree in the notion of like certain contexts, it's going to be permissible even though the action is wrong, simply because the outcome just far outweighs the means. So, for example, the Anne Frank scenario, right? Everyone acknowledges that and say that this would be permissible even though in most situations lying would be wrong. Oh, we can even agree that Anne Frank's action was wrong under this view of infinite bad, but you would say it's permissible regardless.
What is wrong about what Anne Frank did?
Well,
The girl who hid from the Nazis, right?
I don't think it's wrong, but I thought you were noting that, well, all lying is wrong. However, there's going to be certain times it's permissible.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and so
yeah,
I
in
feel
that
like,
case, it definitely would be permissible to hide from the authority. Sure.
yeah, and so I feel like okay, sure, you can say most of IVF is wrong, all IVF is wrong, but there are going to be certain particular scenarios where it's permissible. Why
Yeah,
can't you
I don't know. I think that IVF is not good for the reasons I already laid out. And so, sure, in some situations, it might make sense to allow a family to do this, but that doesn't take away from, I think, the basic nature of what IVF is and why it's fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, we can like hold this within your worldview and it being like pretty consistent. That's fine, but it also acknowledges that there are going to be certain bad actions that are just permissible, and that's what I was trying to get at when like obviously they're going to be as systems are going to carry bad luggage. There's going to be particular scenarios in which it's permissible regardless if the means is bad. And so in this notion, I feel like this can hold to the idea of this is transgressing onto the idea of abortion. Now you're going to say it's absolutely absurd to have any abortion for any given reason unless medically necessary.
Sure.
And then we're back to the question of, okay, does the means far outweigh the outcome? And so I guess it kind of falls a little bit under like deontology, threshold deontology. But would you not say that there are going to be particular scenarios outside of medical necessity that are just permissible?
No,
Okay,
no,
why?
there is no scenario outside of a medical necessity.
Okay. Um, and then I guess it all goes back to the first argument of traits, which is just I hold like the thinking agents as like the significant partial between a non-thinking agent. Like for example, do you think it's you would say it's okay to unplug a brain dead individual, right? Because they have no ability to ever gain consciousness again or any other function.
No, I don't think you should unplug a brain unalive person.
What? Why?
Isn't that schmurdering them? Isn't that unaliving them? I don't know. I don't think that's right. I haven't thought about that too much, but why would you unplug them?
Because
Their life is being sustained by something else, right?
well, their body is still functional, the mind is not, and they're no longer necessarily quote
And you
unquote.
know for certain, like 100%, that
Yeah,
they're not going to be able to think again and to, go back
yeah.
to what they were before.
Brain dead is often characterized as irreversible. So like they
Yeah, sure. In
can't.
that case, fine. Okay.
Yeah. And so even though the body is alive, okay, so the body's still alive, but the brain is like dysfunctional. So that's why it's a reference to brain dead. And so if the brain is like non-functional, then it seems like actually, wait, if you're fine with unaliving the brain dead individual, it's because a particular trait is not functional.
Um, I don't know. I think that you're breaking down the situation to a reality that's not what we actually care about. I think that in the brain dead situation, that's somebody at the end of their life, and they have essentially lost their life, and they're not going to get their life back, and so then it is acceptable to unalive them.
Yeah, this breakdown isn't necessarily disproving the whole pro-life concept. That wasn't the point. It's a breakdown of what we mean by we value humans. While your contention is more like the grouping is what we value necessarily, while
Yes.
mine's based on the trait of the individual.
Yeah, and I
And
get it, and you can have good critiques on it, but I think that in the vast majority of cases, when you look at how the mind or how people actually think about the issue and what we actually see when we model out these situations, people are going to value the people because they are people, not because of certain traits.
but if this was true, then why? And when we break down the brain dead individual, okay, so sure, because they commonly, it's just because of, well, you say it's just because of the people, and I'm saying actually, when people say I value people, I think that if we take the sentence alone, we're just going to assume that they'll just talk about the group. But what they actually mean is like, well, if we say, do you value people with personhood? Well, normally they're synonymous, but you understand the notion. They're talking about a particular trait of like sentience, for example, like the ability to experience. They don't
I
value
don't I
people.
don't think so, man. Because there are adults who are disabled who don't experience the world the way we experience the world, or at least it doesn't seem like they do. They don't have the capabilities we do. But if you're a good person, you're a moral person, you view them as equally valuable to people like me. So I don't
Um,
think you're like constantly. I mean, I get what you're saying, that that's really what's going on behind the scenes, but I would again just say that everything in the world, whether you like it or not, works off of models. And I think that my model is just better. I think that your model is maybe more specific, but it's not always true. In this case, again, with somebody who's disabled later in life, who doesn't have the same intellectual capabilities of you and I'm not thinking about that when I'm valuing them. I'm valuing them because of their nature. They're a human.
but remember when like your category is based on the general grouping. I think mine can also be viewed this way of the general grouping. So like that's why I don't specify what type of thinking, but just thinking. And so if it's just going to be thinking groups, then I think that's fine to say that most individuals who say talk about people, they're thinking about the group sentience. Especially when we ask anyone, what is personhood? What do you think they normally say?
What is personhood?
Yeah, what do you think people normally say when they
I don't know.
when
I
you
don't know what people. I don't know what normal people, average people say. They probably say humans. I don't know.
I
What do
feel
you
like
think?
Well, I think when we say people, they say humans, sure. But when we say personhood, then they're like, okay,
Maybe like
we
citizens. I mean,
um, well, no, I don't think this. I don't know
I
about
don't know.
that.
I don't know what they say. I'm guessing, but
Well, yeah, I think that people, maybe humans. This is like guessing at this point. I don't have a poll, so but when they say personhood, I think most people understand the difference between a people and personhood as like a subject, like a sentient being, because that's why I said back to the brain dead individual. They're just going to simply say like, well, most people are going to say, oh, we can unplug this individual because they have no future capability of coming back. And what does that mean? Well, they're just talking about a specific trait, even in a human and the body's still functional, they are unable to come back to a thinking as a thinking agent. And that's why when we go to the comatose
well, can
patient,
I raise a
no, go
suspicion
ahead.
on that assumption? And that being that I don't actually think most people think like that. I think most people, when someone's brain dead, think, oh, they're gone. I've
Well, yeah,
actually, when my grandpa passed away, that's how it was. He was
well,
gone, right? He was being
yeah.
kept alive on a machine. He was going to come back. He has already left. And that, look, again, things come back to models. And when you are brain dead, you're not going to come back. You are, for all intensive purposes, are gone already, right? You're just, was being sustained right now is a very lesser version of who you really are.
Yeah, and for the person in the comments, they were talking about like we don't desecrate the bodies, and I agree. Like I don't think you should desecrate a completely dead body, right? There's still values to a fetus as well. Like I don't think you should take crack while you're pregnant or something like that. And that's because I do hold some certain future value statements. Hence why the like if someone's in a coma and they can come back to life, then I hold that much differently than I do a brain dead individual. And so your grandpa, you said your grandpa could have come back to life. Obviously, I don't know.
No, he couldn't have.
Oh, couldn't have. Okay,
Right, like
well,
when we were in that situation, I was really little, but it wasn't. We didn't think about any complex concepts like sentience or other conversations. It was no, he's gone. Like he passed away, but he's just being sustained by a machine right now. I know he didn't literally pass away yet, but you know what I mean, right? Like Grandpa's not there anymore. Like I'm sorry, we have to let Grandpa go. It is his
but
time to go.
when you
And so I
say
think like understanding that situation from that model makes a lot more sense to people and is much more in line with how we reason.
but that's the thing. When you say grandpa is not there anymore, you're off. When people think, especially when it comes to families, it gets even more trait dependent. Like they think about the relationships. They think about like all the like these normative like ideas of like family and like blood relations and like how how they taught demeanor. They don't think about his species, right? Like when we have a
Well,
dog
no,
who dies.
him being grandpa is that the assumption there is he's of our species. We value him because he's our grandpa, and he's our grandpa because of the biological nature between us.
Yeah, and remember what we said before about like how someone could say I value humans, and you're gonna think, well, this sentence just means that they just generally value the group of humans, and you don't think it's more about the traits, but it's more about the group. But then when we
Well, no,
talk about
because okay, I get what you're saying. So like subconsciously, yeah, maybe there is something about grandpa being sentient in there. But when you take it to situations where people don't have the same sentience that we have, right? We still value them even if they don't have the potential for that sentience or the previous ability to have that sentience. We value them for who they are, and because they're of a species that has the opportunity to experience the world a certain way.
right, but the whole breakdown was just simply to show that when it comes to like the question which we didn't get to go to was the coma patient. Now it's like the more like controversial opinion. Like if someone has a coma and they're predicted to wake up in 2 years, well, I think it's very controversial opinion to say whether we keep them alive or not. Some people are going to view that they're going through like a trauma, like it's going to be like traumatizing to go through that state. While others will say like it doesn't matter, we need to bring them back. So because based on what they wanted to live beforehand, and so I think in my worldview, I think it depends. I'm if they're not thinking whatsoever and they're not experiencing in this coma for whatever given reason, then I think it's going to be up to how much burden is it going to leave on whoever's looking after the individual? Like, if I'm the only one who can look after him, are you saying I'm obligated to look after this individual for years and years? Well, no. And obviously, your pregnancy is not years and years. But
It would depend on your relationship to the individual and the need of the individual. But yes, we do have obligations to each other. Yes.
so if it's a stranger, am I obligated to?
No, not just some random stranger. No. But for
Okay.
example, our medical field, we're obligated to care for that person, especially if we know they're going to come back at some point.
I think that they're state dependent and country dependent. So it depends how long, for one. Number two, it depends on how much resources. And number three, it depends who's given necessary care. So like family are often given the option. If there's no family involved, then I think it's up to the hospital.
Well, let me say this. In every situation, you have to ask yourself what is more in line with what is infinitely good, which is to say, what is objectively or the best thing that we can do that results in the most good. And I think that in the case of somebody who's in a coma that's going to come back from a coma, that the best thing we can do objectively is to care for that person. And then I work down from there and I see how it can all work together. But beyond that, I also believe, like, just generally speaking, we most definitely all have obligations to each other. That's like the basis of politics. But yeah,
Well,
so
I
that's how I
agree
think
that-
about things.
Well, I agree the better option is to keep the coma patient alive. Now, the reason why I say this is because not necessarily that people are like it has a right to be kept alive, but necessarily because it's just going to be more beneficial, and because the negatives are just financial reasons. Well, I think that when it comes to a lot of women, I think it's not just financial reasons. I think it's a multitude of reasons, especially when someone's inside your body. I think it's intrinsically different than something that's outside your body.
I agree that it's biologically different, but I think that based on principles, it's pretty much the same thing.
So would you say it's the same for, like, if I had to look after someone on a boat compared to someone inside my body or me attached to them from like blood transfusions? You think that they're principally similar?
So you have to care about somebody on a, what do you mean on a boat?
Baby on the boat. I found on the boat. I'm in the middle of the sea. I'm obligated to look after the baby until I hit
Oh, of
shore.
course, yes. You have to look. If you find a baby in the middle of the ocean, then you are obligated to care for that baby, yes, until you can transfer that obligation to somebody else.
Yeah, and so with this notion, it's going to be that, well, I think that's principally different than something inside of your body. I think that, like, well, obviously, in my view, if you're a thinking agent, I think you should be forced to, carry that term. So that's why I don't see it as principally different in that notion. But if it's like you find a baby in the middle, you see an embryo dish in the middle of the ocean, like I don't know if I could say that someone's obligated to go and get that, keep it for 9 months, and use the resources to sustain that process. Now I could say like depending on how much resources, if it's causing that amount of stress on the individual. This is going to be subjective, obviously, but in
Yeah,
most cases-
I strongly believe that humans are social creatures. Also, my phone's going to die soon, so I have to jump off eventually
fine.
here. But I believe that humans are social creatures, and we are dependent on each other, and that's part of the beauty of politics and being political animals. But with that comes obligations. So yes, at certain times you do have obligations to each other, even people outside of your immediate family.
Yeah, I do. I think you have some obligations to strangers. I agree with that idea. It was more to do with like when we say we have a right, like we're obligated to, often leads to kind of forced to, and I think there are some forces you do in virtue of like with humans, like calling the police if you witness a crime. But I don't know if I would hold the view that we're forced to look after somebody for 9 months if we're not in that role to do so, like a doctor. I think
Well,
a doctor.
do you have the right to do what is wrong?
Technically you do.
You're entitled to do what is wrong.
Like I feel like someone like cheating is wrong. I don't know if I could say you have the right to cheating, but I don't think you have like it should be illegal to cheat.
I disagree. Well, actually, no,
Really?
I don't think it should be illegal to cheat, but I mean that you don't have the right to cheat. It's more of kind of like a neutral. Obviously, it's wrong, but in terms of the law, it's more neutral, I would say, or in terms of how we view rights.
Yeah,
Like you have the
I
right
would
to do
call
what
it
is
right.
right. You're entitled to do what is right. You
Maybe a
can choose to
privilege.
do wrong, and at some point, it's illegal to do wrong, and we are going to stop you from doing wrong because it affects all of our pursuits towards the infinite good.
I think, yeah, I do agree with that notion. It's that's why I kind of say like privilege to do so. I guess you have the privilege to cheat if you want
Well,
to.
an idea. So also, it's we have to be real, and we have to understand reality. And right now, in our reality, it doesn't make any sense to make it illegal to cheat because we have so much worse sins and disgusting things to deal with. But hypothetically, in another world, if we were much more perfect creatures, which maybe we can get to on Earth, I don't know, what would we be restricting? One of those things might be cheating because we are so much more perfect that we are trying to limit vice, and that's a vice to limit. And that's, I believe, my view, when I say things like ban abortion and I talk about the law, I believe that the law is a tutor for culture. That's one of its main purposes. And that it can do that and it can shift things in a certain way because politics is all about us getting along. So,
That is an interesting view. I like that idea. Because like normally I depict like law as like for like something that's like a lot troublesome. Like cheating's troublesome, but obviously in extreme sense it's not.
but to
Um,
consider what I said though, right? Like in a situation where we are much more perfect, which we're not right
yeah, I
now,
agree.
but
Yeah.
like we might make cheating illegal because if that's like our worst thing we're dealing with, why wouldn't we? You know what I mean? It's because we're trying to perfect our union. That's what we say in the United States. But we're also trying to perfect ourselves. We're trying to push ourselves and everybody around us towards virtue.
I guess yeah. I think I would have to be agnostic on that. In the hypothetical, obviously.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I would have to think about the consequence of that action.
yeah.
And I feel like what consequence would we give that? A $1 fine, maybe. Yeah, but yeah, I think we covered like most of it. I think for now, as well as your phone's gonna run out. So
Yeah, it's getting down there. I guess I've been going for a while if it's running out because I was fully charged. So, all right, man.
uh,
Well, it's good to talk to you.
no problem.
See you later. All right, that was a good chat. I wanted to ask where he was from. It's a cool accent. Us Americans, man, we don't sound as elegant as Europeans. Anyway, or maybe I don't know where he was from. Oh, England. Okay, yeah, cool, awesome. All right, so that's it for the few people who are still left from this long stream. I do appreciate you tuning in. I was only going to go for an hour, but like these things usually go, I went farther. Thank you, honey. I don't actually think it was that great of a video. I'm debating on whether or not I should take it down. It was the first stream I've done on YouTube, and I was flustered because I had the TikTok going, and I don't have the TikTok stream key yet. So it was distracting me, but oh, thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll be doing more of those and then cutting them up and posting them as separate clips. But I'm also going to start posting these streams. So this stream from today, I'm just going to post up. So if you weren't here earlier, then go subscribe to the YouTube channel because we had some really good conversations beforehand, both with individuals and me and individuals with Kay. Yeah, awesome, yeah. Yeah, that's the video I was talking to you about the other day when you brought up his name. Yeah, I meant to play that. That was one of the moments of being flustered. I meant to play that during the speech when it was brought up, but that stuff is so important to have on hand, just like the book I have. You have to show people what you're talking about, right? Because the world is based on models, and we have to do things. We have to make actions about our reality. We have to make decisions about what we're seeing. So while philosophical, getting into that rabbit hole is fun and useful, the fundamentals are very useful and important, the models are really what I would believe are the most important thing to fledge out. Yep, I agree. I don't even know. And it's like, how can you can live in terms and stuff and semantical things that you don't truly understand, that you don't understand their meaning, but you won't understand the issue then if you're just living in abstract concepts. So, all right. Thank you, honey, as always, for the support. And who else is in here that I know? Hey, it's Brittany. Brittany, what's up, Brittany? Maverick, I think I've seen you before. And Andrew, what's up, bro? All right. See you guys. I appreciate it.